Thank you, Kelsey. Good evening, everyone. We are in the regular business meeting of the District of Squamish for Tuesday, June 6th. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an amended agenda in front of council with a few additions, and if council is okay with the amended agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. The agenda moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. First up, we have delegations, petitions, and proclamations, and with us today is Jake Rudolph, Deputy City Manager of Abbotsford, and who is also on the CAMA board, and he's here to award the District of Squamish with a distinction. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Heinzman, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. My name is Jake Rudolph. I'm the Deputy City Manager with the City of Abbotsford. I'm also the British Columbia representative for the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators. And I have the pleasure this evening to be here to present the district with a national award. And I have a statement I'm going to read, and then I believe there's a video. And if we can have a photo up with the plaque or whatever you would like, I'd be pleased to participate in that. So, as I indicated, I'm with the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators, and last week the national conference was held in Ottawa, and the district was awarded in the under 20,000 category an award for innovation. So I'm going to read what's been provided to me so I get it right and for the record, and then we'll carry on. So each year, the CAMA, Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators, recognizes the value of excellence and professionalism in the municipal administration through the annual awards program in 3 areas of program excellence. Awards are presented to local governments and their chief administrators in recognition of their creative and successful programs, projects, or services. The annual awards program has been designed to encourage excellence in the art of professional national municipal administration. Success stories are circulated widely to all participating municipalities and members across the country. So the video and the details of this award will be posted on the website and available. And it is actually widely used as an example for other municipalities to examine and utilize. Because Canada has a unique mixture of small and large communities, awards are granted really according to populations. I indicated there's the under 20,000 category, there's the 20 to 100,000, and there's the over 100,000 category. And there's a small number of awards in each category, in fact, up to 3. So it's not that many. The following criteria were used by the committee when reviewing the submissions. And again, this is an impartial panel that used that was established from representatives from different provinces to select the best in all fields. So, and I believe there were a record number of submissions this year, something in the vicinity of 58. So just to put it a bit in context for you. So some of the criteria is the extent that the program, project, or service involves innovation, creativity, and exemplifies a significant change. Its impact on the professional, on the impact on municipal administration, the potential a program, project, or service possesses to enhance practices of municipalities and administrators elsewhere and the degree of their transferability, the impact of the program, project, or service on the municipality and on the organization, even if the innovation itself was not new to the profession, and the sustainability of the results, the long-lasting positive measurable effects on the success of the organization or the profession for that matter. So now the Professional Development Award recognizes a community that has developed a unique and innovative professional development program for their staff and can be replicated in other municipalities. Applicants were asked to include documentation that extensively outlined the program, and I'm here to announce that this year's winner of the Professional Development Award for a municipality with a population under 20,000 is the District of Squamish for your Hardwired for Leadership project. I believe there's a video that describes the project.
Congratulations to the District of Squamish, British Columbia, winner of the 2017 CAMA Professional Development Award in the under 20,000 population category for its Hardwired for Leadership training program, designed to create employees with the critical capabilities and skills needed to succeed at all levels of the organization. Hardwired for Leadership is an internal training program for municipal employees that focuses on effective communication skills, coaching and effective feedback, difficult conversations and conflict resolution, effective recognition, leading high-performance teams, project management success, change management, leading a culture of service excellence, personality profile awareness using the DISC model, dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness, with the goal of having all employees complete the profile. The program looks at three aspects: developing leaders at all levels of the organization, developing leaders locally, and developing a succession mindset. Employees at every level of the organization are invited to join the program. Hardwired for Leadership is imperative for maintaining business success, helps with office morale and engagement, and grooms employees for their future roles by giving them more complex tasks. Investing in employees' growth keeps them focused, motivated, and loyal. Long-lasting results come from increased productivity, retention of committed employees, nurturing hidden leaders, increasing employee engagement, and better decision-making throughout the entire organization. Congratulations to the District of Squamish, BC, winner of the 2017 CAMA Professional Development Award.
I have a plaque if we'd like the presentation. Sure how to do this?
Maybe I'll just say a few words. And I want to acknowledge, I'll sit down because everybody else will yell at me. Sorry, Pat. I do want to say a few words because this is really a staff-driven and a staff-led, management-led program, and we're really proud of how our CAO and her team have pulled together a really innovative approach to bring about a great team of really enthusiastic people who work for the citizens of Squamish. But also really try to make sure that our staff are feeling empowered to their job and feel like they have a future here in the long term. So I just want to say kudos to Linda and Robin and Gary and Jeff and the whole team for really doing an amazing job. Well done. Thank you, Jake. Moving on to the agenda, we have consideration of unscheduled public attendance. If there's something that a member of the public would like to speak to that's of an urgent matter. Edith, do you want to come up and maybe frame the urgency? And then council will decide if we hear about the urgency.
Recently, federal fisheries, first of all, Edith Tobe, 41820 Rayburn Road.
You don't have to do that for this part.
Recently, the federal fisheries has cut programs affecting immediately staff changes, which have implication on all the projects the Squamish River Watershed Society is engaged with the municipality. And I'm hoping I can request a letter from Mayor and Council addressing these concerns. Timing is crucial Every day, we're just not sure what the future of these staff people are, and we want to try to change it around before we lose them.
So, council, is everyone okay with hearing Edith? We don't need a motion to that effect. I'll just have you continue right now. There has been, maybe I'll preface this a little bit. There has been a lot of conversation about this in the last week. Our MP is highly involved in this dialogue as well. I think it sounds like these cuts were a bit of a surprise to even people within the Liberal government. And it looks like it was a bit of an oversight or a remnant of old policies that previous Conservative government had, cuts that the previous Conservative government had implemented that never got pulled out. In any event, these cuts were put through. There was quite a bit of dialogue and discussion at FCM about it. And it does affect not just the Squamish Watershed Society, but any salmon enhancement project or streamside restoration project pretty much throughout BC and the Yukon. So I think maybe I'll get Edith to elaborate, but we need to make it clear that this is unacceptable and urge the federal government to change, to rectify the situation as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think you've hit all the salient points. The Salmonid Enhancement Program, which was established in 1977 by Romeo LeBlanc. It's his son, who's now our federal fisheries minister, Dominic LeBlanc, whose department has severely cut key components of that program, which means that they are dead-ending in March of 2018, the Resource Restoration Unit, which is a habitat biologist and an engineering team that we work directly with, as do others in the province. The Salmonids in the Classroom program, which affects over 35,000 students, and the Steelhead and Cutthroat Trout Hatchery program. These three programs don't amount to a lot of money to run, and yet the government has given it to the Treasury Department to decide which programs get cut, and they were identifying legacy programs, which, as you say, carry over from the Harper era. And as you've acknowledged, I do believe this came as a complete shock to the federal minister and our MPs that did not look at this in terms of the long-term ramifications. But these small departments that did not cost a lot of money for the government to run have huge implications in tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in salmon habitat restoration, productivity, populations, and it's a real surgical cut to the wild salmon throughout the province, certainly in our region in the Squamish watershed. So I'm glad that you had the discussions last week when you're in Ottawa. I think getting messages from council and from the municipalities throughout the province will send a really strong message to the federal minister that this is not acceptable. At the same time that they made an announcement of $1.4 billion being directed to coastal ocean protection plan and restoration opportunities, it's basically offering us a beautiful looking car with no engine. And from the standpoint of the Watershed Society, the money is meaningless without somebody driving and directing us. And I have to add one more point. We've been working with the federal fisheries staff on our restoration projects in Squamish since the early 1990s. Without this team, we would never have done the estuary restoration in the Helen Trail, in the former dredge spoil, which you've got that beautiful painting by Zoe, which depicts what we can do. We would never have accomplished the Mamprim reunion. We would never have accomplished, most recently, the West Bar log sort conversion back to estuary habitat. And the future projects that we were looking to develop with municipal staff will be dead in the water. So this is really important, I think, to ourselves and to all of British Columbia. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you went over some of the projects that we would not have had without this funding. And as you said, it's a relatively small piece, and with a huge amount of leverage, because it's groups like the Watershed Society and other groups, the Squamish Environmental Society, that can take this small amount of money, take this support from the FO, and actually leverage it into significant projects that are really valuable, not only on an ecological point of view, but a monetary point of view as well. So I actually did write a letter last week because I wanted to get it there as soon as possible. But I think it would be really valuable for council to write a letter as well and send it to all of our all other local governments, particularly within our region, to urge them to be quick about it and provide feedback. I'm hopeful that they're going to change this. I think they're looking at ways that they can, but I think it's really great if we can help move that out of this.
And just adding another point that does not seem to be understood even at the most senior levels of the federal government is that this liability issue, for years since the 70s, we've had the input and support of DFO staff. With the removal of this program, we no longer have the long-term maintenance that they have been providing all these years for the intake structures, for the off-channel habitat, for all those salmon-bearing streams that are on the outsides of dikes. So this puts them all at risk. All of the golf course channels, all of the water courses at the Cheakamus Center, the Dave Marshall Salmon Reserve, and it goes on and on. So I think the government needs to be really reminded that they have an obligation to provide overview and services to our municipalities, and they can't be downloading on the backs of municipalities, First Nations, and certainly not nonprofits.
One question, I heard rumors that hatcheries were actually getting rid of broodstock that would no longer had funding. Is that correct?
Yes. I don't remember which hatcheries. 2 hatcheries have been told these cuts. The program's ending, so I believe they've released their steelhead into the system. And you may have heard also the SMODs in the classroom had a 1-year extension to the education coordinator positions. But that's a 1-year reprieve. That's not by no means reinstating these very important programs.
So I guess any questions from council or comments? Is council willing to put forward a motion that we write a letter to urge the federal government to reinstate these programs, and that we communicate and urge our other local governments to do the same? Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Pryor. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much, and thanks for all the work that you've done and your organization's done in the community. We'll see if we can right this ship. I mean, be a part of it. I'm not sure.
It's all a partnership, and you remove one part of it and it falls apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we have the address for that letter on our website, or where is that address for everybody else that's watching?
I would recommend sending this to Minister LeBlanc, and I don't have the address off the top, but also CC, the House of Commons in Ottawa, does not require a stamp, and for sure CC Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister's office, and let it be heard, as well as our MP, Pamela Goldsmith-Jones, who is really working hard to try to remedy the situation. So all of those addresses, I'm assuming links probably are available at the district website.
We can get links, and I think in particular, MP Goldsmith-Jones said she was going to get all of our letters expeditiously to the parties that need to see it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Did I call the question? Yes. Okay. Next up, we have 3 timed items. The first one is 7A1, Development Variance Permit number 125, Lizzie Bay.
I have to declare a conflict. I'm the only property owner in this one.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton, and I'm a planner here at the District of Squamish. Presenting you today, Development Variance Permit 125, located at 37830 3rd Avenue. It's also known as the Lizzie Bay property. I wanted to start by presenting a brief timeline of the recent development and variance permit events for this particular property in the last year. The application was first received in June 2016. It was first presented to Council in January of 2017. At that time, staff had recommended the defeat of the project for 2 main reasons. Firstly, because the proposal was originally not in line with the building setbacks and district streetscape recommendations. Secondly, because the ground floor setback solution the applicant had proposed to accommodate the streetscape recommendations equaled a loss of the valuable commercial space. Council referred the DP back to staff, as Council also expressed concern for the loss of commercial space. In February of 2017, staff brought back to Council a revised development permit. This application proposed the same ground floor level setback, but with increased commercial space from the original application and separation from the residential units. Staff supported this development permit and council approved the DP and all the variances except for the variance to the exterior side setback along 3rd Avenue. Defeat of the variance was primarily due to maintaining a space for adequate streetscape widths in keeping with the district's active transportation plan. So today I'm going to present to you the revised variance for the 3rd Avenue setback. So the property is within the official community plan downtown land use designation. It is zoned comprehensive development 43 and is within the development permit area of downtown south and multifamily residential. The photo above highlights the active transportation plan, future separated bike lanes in orange, sorry it's a bad color on that screen, and the approved downtown truck route study in blue. The development variance permit number 125 is proposing to reduce the exterior principal building setback from 4.57 meters to 0.2 meters for the upper stories, and you can see this in blue. And reduce the exterior ground level setback from 4.57 meters to 1.95 meters. You can see that in orange. As part of this application, district planning and engineering staff have worked closely together to ensure each proposed cross-section in DVP 125 for Lizzie Bay's street frontages meet the active transportation plan and truck route study objectives. To record these changes, the application also includes streetscape revisions to the original DP 425 landscape plans. The significant streetscape modifications proposed in DVP 125 from the original DP 425 are highlighted in the next few slides. So this development variance permit 125 has proposed no changes to the principal building setback from the original application. And so you can see this here in blue. However, the variance now also includes a larger ground floor setback in orange, and is now 0.65 meters greater than what was proposed in DP 425. Other changes to the 3rd Avenue cross-section include increased boulevard width, you can see in green, and a complete 10-meter cross-section to ensure everything fits within the half of the 20-meter road right-of-way. Third Avenue landscape improvements also include the addition of parking delineation and a 0.6 meter concrete bike lane separation with vegetated curb bulges that further protect cyclists in narrow streets to promote reduced vehicle speeds and supportive pedestrian environments. As the east-west active transportation connector has recently shifted from Vancouver Street and Victoria Street to now Main Street, it is no longer deemed necessary to include a bike lane on Vancouver Street. Moreover, with the recent competitions of the district's truck route study, Vancouver Street has also been confirmed a truck route, therefore making it unsafe to have Vancouver as a designated painted bike lane route for cyclists. In addition, this property is located northeast of the truck route turning intersection and therefore requires wider street widths to accommodate truck route turning radii. Therefore, in the revised landscape plans, both bike lanes and parking lanes in blue are no longer included along this property's streetscape section of Vancouver Street. And instead, a painted turning radius is included in orange and an increased boulevard for patio space and sidewalk is included as seen in yellow here. Finally, the revised landscape plan also show a complete intersection at 3rd and Vancouver Street with 2 crosswalk letdowns and a complete separated bike lane to the intersection. A site plan review of the additional planting and space for the patio street activation can also be seen on the left image. So in summary, the changes to the streetscape were made to ensure the development variance would not impact the objectives of the active transportation plan and to ensure that they are in line with the recently approved truck route study. It is also important to note that although the ground floor commercial building have been set back further, the development has been rearranged slightly to ensure there is no net loss of commercial space from the original DP 425 application. Without the approval of this requested variance, Lizzie Bay, as designed in the approved DP 425, cannot receive a building permit and thus would not be developed. This project was posted to the district's Development Showcase webpage. The district received no request for a public information meeting and no meeting was held. Notices for the zoning variance were mailed and delivered to residents within 100 meters of the property as per the legislative requirement, and no public comments have been submitted. Staff recommendation to council is to authorize development variance permit number 125 to reduce the exterior principal building setback from 4.57 meters to 0.2 meters for the upper story specifically, and then to reduce the exterior ground level setback from 4.57 meters to 1.95 meters. Thank you, and welcome questions and comments.
Council, are there any questions for staff or clarification purposes at this point? Seeing none, this is a development variance permit, so I'm just going to quickly read this. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting the following requested variances to the district for Squamish zoning bylaw. As Carrie said, to reduce the exterior principal building setbacks from 4.57 meters to 0.2 meters for the upper stories, and to reduce the exterior ground level setback from 4.57 meters to 1.95 meters along 3rd Avenue. After I've confirmed that it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this DVP? Just come up.
Graham Farstad, Arlington Group Planning and Architecture, representing the applicant. I think the staff report covers things quite thoroughly. Just wanted to indicate that we've had a number of iterations dealing with changes to the streetscape to accommodate the district's desire to accommodate a bike lane, which we've always supported, and the changes in the capacity. It's been a bit of a challenge because the original cross sections were up to 25 meters, and we have 20 meters on the road. So functionally, we've been able, with the variations that have occurred from a transportation perspective, to accommodate the full desire of the district there. By doing so, we've moved the building at grade back, so it's now 1.95 meters back. So almost all of the sidewalk is on the site development, and but it would be covered by a covenant of the district to accommodate that. We've got 3 bulges to accommodate the streetscape, and we've got a number of iterations with our landscape architect, and I'm quite pleased that she's been able to accommodate those issues. So I think we've addressed all of the issues that the district has indicated, and we're really looking forward to have the first separated bike lane development in the district, I think. So,
Thank you very much.
just as an aside, I'm doing work for the Caribou Regional District, and just reiterate what Edith had mentioned. This is front page news in the Caribou as well. You totally floored people about the cutbacks to salmon enhancement, so it's resonating around the province.
A little off topic, but I appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this development variance plan? I'll ask for a second time, is there anyone who would like to speak to this DVP? And I'll ask for a third time, is there anyone who would like to speak to this DVP? Don't see any speakers. Council, what is your pleasure? Councilor Reyes?
Thank you. I'll move the recommendation.
Is that moved by Councilor Reyes, second by Councilor Kent? Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilor Reyes?
Thank you. And I guess to put it into one sentence, the changes satisfy me, and I commend the applicant for working with us through 3 or 4 meetings as staff outlined to get what we were looking for. And I think this is, there is still a small compromise, but I think it is an acceptable compromise, so I'll support this application.
Anyone else like to comment? Councilor Scott?
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the proponent's attention to our concerns with commercial space and the setbacks and that. So I'm very excited.
I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Barset. on in the agenda, we are on to item 7A2, development variance permit number 130, Crystal Term.
Me again, Mary Hamilton, planner of the District of Squamish, presenting to you today development variance permit 130 located at 38540 Loggers Lane, also known as the Crystal Term lease area. So the property is within the official community plan civic and institutional land use designation. It is zone C3 tourist commercial and is within the development permit area 4 for Bamboo Line Channel. So on March 15, 2016, District of Squamish Council adopted zoning bylaw amendment to rezone this C3 property to allow for a recreational facility as a principal use. On February 21st, 2017, Council approved a lease agreement to Crystal Term to use a portion of the district property for an aerial park structure. The development permit for the structure is under 600 meters square and was therefore delegated and approved by the district's general manager of community planning and infrastructure on May 24, 2017. It is relevant to note that the development permit is conditional on a variance required for the height of the structure, which is now what I will be presenting to Council this evening. A variance to the zoning bylaw section 25.3 to increase the maximum allowable height of a principal structure from 10.68 meters to 17.51 meters is required to accommodate the road course structure. The variance for an additional 6.83 meters will allow for this unique type of recreational facility use to be constructed on the tourist commercial zone property. Staff are supportive of the variance because the additional height is necessary to allow for the structure to achieve the purpose of the aerial high rope activities. It is thus integral to the design of the height of the structure will have a minimal impact on the mountain views from or shading on adjacent areas. Lastly, the structure keeps a general appearance of open space, not obstructing surrounding views, and is in keeping with Squamish's Hardwired for Adventure branding. Again, the public engagement, this project was posted for the district's development showcase webpage. The district received no request for a public information meeting, and no meeting was held. Notices for the zoning variance was mailed and delivered to residents within 100 meters of the property, as per the legislative requirement, and one comment was received by the applicant to explain more about the necessary height required for the structure to achieve the aerial high rope activities. It was received prior to the report and should be attached to your information this evening. The recommendation from staff is that the District of Squamish authorize the issuance of the development variance permit 130 as presented, and at this time can open to any questions or comments.
Council, any questions for clarification purposes from staff? Councilor required.
17 meters is how many feet? Come on. Well, I just had to get a question in there, but I think it's great.
Okay, let's
I know.
question for clarification purposes from council. I don't see any. As this is a development variance permit, similar to the last one, I will read this quick statement. The proponent and members of the public will be given opportunity to be heard or present written submissions respecting the following requested variance to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw. To increase the maximum height of a principal structure, aerial park structure, from 10.68 meters to 17.51 meters to accommodate the road course structure. After I have confirmed that it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council. As Carrie said, the proponents unfortunately can't be here tonight, so they did submit a letter. I just want to make sure everyone from council got the letter with a bit of a rationalization on the needed height. I will open the podium up to anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this DVP. For a second time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this DVP? And for a third time, is there anyone who would like to speak to this DVP? Seeing no one, council, any comments, or Councillor Elliott?
I was just going to remove the resolution.
Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Race. Councillor Elliott, do you want to speak to it? Councillor Schwab?
Yeah. I know that this is going to add to the animation at that site, and I think that within the context of where the aerial ropes course will be sitting, that the additional height will be a barrier to enjoyment of the area. So it supports.
Councillor Schwab?
I will be supporting this for the same reasons. The lease is also being renewed right now as well.
It's the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, but 23 feet extra on top should be brought in when the public actually was engaged with this project. And it's right in front of the Smokeplex Park, and so I can't support this right now.
Councillor Race?
Thank you. I am going to support this. You know, that is a significant variance, about 23 or 24 feet, and that might not work in a lot of other height situations. But for me, it works here primarily because it's such an open structure. Essentially, you see right through it, and so it's not like you're looking at a wall. So I think this is suitable for this. It does make the thing work. I've supported this project all along because, as Councillor Elliott said, I think it will add a lot of animation to that area and is consistent with our brand. And so I will be supporting the motion.
And just to clarify, normally these types of DPs it's a delegated authority to staff, and they would make this judgment based on our policies, but because the requested variance, the variance comes to council, but otherwise, in normal circumstances, this wouldn't be actually coming to chambers. Okay, don't see any more hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chappelle opposes, motion carries. Because the DVP has been approved, all the conditions of the lease have been met, and so council now has the opportunity to vote on the final version of the lease that's in front of us. And I'll ask Mr. Tom to walk us through that.
So, bear with me. So, actually back on February 21st, earlier this year, council actually endorsed the lease that you have in front of you tonight already. We went through all the key business terms, discussed those, and they were decided upon, and a lease was endorsed at that point in time, but it had some conditions that just needed to be met, some due diligence that was to be done by the applicant. And so at that point in time, we did establish an arbitrary date of April 21st for the conditions to be met. We just didn't want it ongoing forever, so it's important to put a date on it. And we also just wanted to recognize that there was a sort of an ambitious timeline to get it done in hopes to get this project going this summer. So that date was set. Based upon the DVP, if the DVP was approved this evening, which it is, then that allows this project to move to the completion stage. So really I'm here just as a housekeeping piece. Council already authorized it, but because the date came and went on April 21st, and the reason why we did let it go is we were still in the due diligence phase and figured we'd rather just wait until everything was done to bring it back to council. So technically we should just get council to restate that authorization from February 21st.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions for Mr. Plum? Don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, what's your interest? Councillor Elliott?
I'll move the motion to approve the lease.
Second by Councillor Kent. Councillor Elliott, would you like to speak to your motion, other than Councillor Schwab?
No, I think we've done our due diligence on this project, and looking forward to seeing it get built and use this site.
Councillor Schwab?
Thanks. I've been opposed to this project since the beginning. To say we need to activate Squamish right now when we have so many visitors up in town, and that parking lot is our only active transportation parking lot for both active transportation and people coming to town to park for recreation in our community. The lease is not enough. We only give them $16,000 a year and pittance for some janitorial services, which also concerns me because little children will have to be crossing in a crosswalk and leaving the facility, the fenced-in facility, to run across the road to go to the bathroom. So that is a safety concern for me. I find that using up public land in this time of such immense growth, I can't support the use of public land like this, and I believe the public was entirely opposed as well. So I oppose redoing this case.
See any more hands? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chappelle opposes. Motion carries. Moving on in the agenda, we have a third development permit number 44, Squamish Self-Storage Queensway. Maybe I'll get this over with before staff starts. The proponents and the members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or present written submissions respecting the following requested variance to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw, section 41, subsection 41.7, off-street parking requirements. To reduce the number of required parking spaces for the storage use component from 147 to 17. After I have confirmed that it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council.
Thanks, Mayor Heitzman. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Aisha Philip, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. For your consideration tonight is DP 444 for Squamish Self-Storage, which, if approved, would permit a mixed-use self-storage and office development. The proposed development is located at 39480 Queensway. It's at the southeast corner of Queens and Pioneer. To the north is vacant industrial land. To the south is the Sea to Sky Business Park, zoned I-8. This is currently being developed with the second phase of the business park. To the east is vacant land within the Sea to Sky Business Park and is currently in the process of being cleared. To the west is industrial land, and this is mostly being used for open storage, and it's zoned I-1. The 1.62 hectare site is within the Sea to Sky Business Park. It's designated for employment and industrial use, and it's zoned I-8. The proposal conforms with the zoning current at the time the application was submitted, which permitted self-storage. The I-8 zoning has since been amended to remove self-storage as a permitted use. The project is subject to Development Permit Area 6 and 6A guidelines. It's within the floodplain, and a flood hazard assessment and related covenant are required prior to DP issuance. The site is also within Riparian Development Permit Area 11 due to the drainage ditch along Pioneer Way. A DP 11 was previously issued, and the proposal meets the riparian buffer requirement. 2 mixed-use buildings are proposed, which are primarily made up of self-storage units, but which also incorporate both first and second-story office space. The main vehicle access is off Queensway. Pedestrian access is provided a couple points along Queensway, and the pedestrian circulation includes internal crosswalks and has internal sidewalks running along the building frontages. The parking requirements of the zoning bylaw have not been met, and a parking variance has been requested by the applicant with support from staff. The parking lot is located between Queensway and the building frontages. Staff and the applicant work together to achieve a total of 50,690 square feet of office space to be incorporated into the proposed storage facility. The proposal also includes an outdoor amenity area with seating and landscaping that supports the office component, and the office use will help activate and animate this site. The office space would be secured via a covenant prior to DP issuance. The overall aesthetic quality of the 2 buildings is representative of high-quality business park design. The proposed height is 9.8 meters, which is 32 feet. The main Queensway facade includes vertical window bays that project above the roof line to add the variation to the building face, as well as the roof. The main building facades are animated with heavy cedar trellises along the frontage, and the applicant has used extensive glazing as well as creative lighting and signage to provide further visual interest along the main building faces. The office uses also face onto Queensway to provide eyes on the street. The other building faces are broken up by playing with simulated wood paneling. The exterior materials palette is contemporary and it's relatable to the adjacent Solterra development. The color scheme is a modern gray and it's highlighted with the simulated wood paneling, as well as color pops from the storage unit doors. The landscaping is in line with the DPA guidelines. The proposed landscaping plan was reviewed by ADP and staff, and numerous suggestions have been incorporated into the plan. The plan provides for a landscaped amenity area. It incorporates rain gardens into the site. There's extensive landscape screening along Pioneer Way. There's also landscape screening along the southern lot line, and they've used vines to climb along the chain link fence that's adjacent to the Solterra development. They also use vines vertically to trellis up the sides of the building as a green accent piece. The applicant has requested a parking variance to reduce the number of required parking spaces for the storage use component from 147 spaces down to 17 spaces. And on the surface, this appears to be a really significant decrease in the number of spaces. However, staff fully support this variance as a self-storage facility typically has an extremely low parking demand, and the self-storage component of this development is not anticipated to generate more demand beyond the 17 spaces that they've provided. The zoning bylaw also does not provide for a specific self-storage facility vehicle count, only for general warehousing. The office parking requirement has been fully met, and they're providing 35 spaces. The proposal was reviewed by our advisory design panel on January 19th and again on April 20th. Initially, ADP was not in support of this project, and the applicant worked closely with staff to address ADP's initial concerns, resulting in ADP's support when the project was reviewed for the second time. The applicant made the following changes to address staff and ADP comments. They reduced the height of the fence along Pioneer Way. They increased the landscaping to screen the fence along Pioneer Way. They increased the amount of rain garden area. They broke up the roof lines using these tall window bays, and they added recess features. They offset building 1 from building 2 to further break up the shape. They reduced the parking lot to bring the building 2 closer to the street. They added cedar trellises along the pedestrian walkways. They added glass canopies over the main entrances. They increased the driving aisles to allow for better internal vehicle circulation. They provided full internal and external pedestrian connectivity, and they added the amenity area. The proposal meets DPA 6 and 6A form and character guidelines. Highlights include the rain gardens for stormwater management and the extensive landscaping for screening. The applicant has also provided the continuous internal pedestrian connectivity through the site. DP 444 was listed on the online development showcase, and a development information sign was posted on the site. Variance notices were mailed to properties within 100 meters of the site, and no comments have been received. Given that the proposal conforms to DPA 6 and 6A guidelines, staff recommend authorization of DP 444, subject to 3 conditions. 1, the submission of landscape bonding. 2, registration of a flood covenant. And 3, registration of a covenant to secure the office space. That concludes tonight's presentation.
Questions for clarification purposes?
Just a quick question. Previously, that ditch in the front along Pioneer was past riparian. Is there a treatment plan for that? Are they going to culvert it or cover it, or?
As part of the RDCC project, we'll be paving and doing full frontage improvements along Pioneer Way, and the ditches will be culverted at that time. But until that point, they are respecting the riparian setback.
That's great.
Thank you. Could you go back to the overhead of the site plan, please? Yeah, that one. So tonight, are we talking about a DP for both buildings or just the one building, just the shaded building?
So the DP covers both buildings.
Both buildings.
The intention is to only do one DP.
Okay. But to build them 2 separate times, one
Yeah.
now and one in the future.
Yeah, so the first building proposed, let me find the cursor. So this building 1 would be phase 1, and then building 2 would be phase 2. And then in the interim, it's hard to see on the site plan, but kind of following the outline here, they would do, the parking lot would be fully built, and then a chain link fence would run to temporarily rope off this site.
Oh.
And is that correct?
That's what I was wondering, because there's only one entrance, which seems to be in phase 2, but you explain that then. The other thing is the parking variance, which would be for the entire site, I take it. With other similar storage operations in town, do they have the same variance? Are there reductions in parking for other self-storage units in the business park?
So I didn't explicitly look up to see if there was previous parking variances for the other storage places, but I believe that most of those, I've been to a few of them, and they don't seem to have very many parking spaces, and those spaces don't appear to be used. I'm thinking of Black Tusk Storage along Queens.
More or less across the street or just down a little bit?
Thank you. I didn't quite hear what you said when you talked about Pioneer Way. Who's building that road?
We are, the district is.
This is one of those DCC bylaws. So that road gets built by the district. It always kind of cheesed me off. And the other was permeable surfaces in the parking lot and green roofs. Oh, no.
No permeable surface for the actual parking lot, but the stormwater from the parking lot would be diverted into the 2 rain gardens for infiltration.
And green roofs.
No,
That's
but
another thing.
I can speak, the applicant is doing a high reflective, like a light colored roof, which arose out of meeting with ADP.
You know, as we, as a community, go into passive buildings, you know, and I've been trying to get permeable surfaces the whole time I've been here for 5 years. We still haven't got one permeable surface. Anyway, when development comes in that need variances, I think we should be getting these green roofs and permeable surfaces. We should get some green stuff out of them.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you. So this is zoned I1, and there's office space going in, and the office space is zoned I1 too, or is there
For clarification, it's I8.
I8?
Yeah, so business and professional office minor is permitted.
Excellent, okay, that's great. And the other thing I wanted to ask about, when we passed the storage in the long bus, there was a self-storage amendment. This was in before that bylaw.
Exactly.
This was actually one of the applications that triggered the discussion around it.
Right.
We're getting a lot of interest.
Thank you.
I have a question. The variance, pardon me, for the parking is specific to this design and this use. They can't change the use of storage and make it into something else, parking or, I don't know, a movie theater or something else that would need a lot of parking. This is specific to this design. It has to be storage, correct? Unless they come back and change their mind down the road, then we'd consider different parking allowances. Just want confirmation.
So the variance is embedded in the DP, which has all these exact plans they need to build to these plans.
And it would be,
And those uses?
it would be varying a specific provision in the zoning bylaw that applies to warehousing. So if the use changed, then the specific parking requirements for that use would have to be addressed.
So, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but when we're approving a DP, we're approving the outside shell.
Yes.
The use is already embedded. We're approving the outside shell. In theory, they could do something else there.
The variance is specific to, the zoning bylaw calls out the parking requirements by the type of use. So when we vary that specific section of the zoning bylaw, we're only varying it for that use.
Okay, I just wanted clarification on that.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Well, that's kind of.
Councillor Kent.
What's the height of the building proposed?
32 feet.
Meters,
It's in the report, and they've already said it.
Yeah.
Right?
There's no variance, all the height meets all the,
Yeah.
the only variance asked for is the parking.
Yeah.
If there's no more questions for clarification purposes,
Well, I'm just following up on your comments there. So is it warehousing and mini storage or just mini storage? I mean, is there?
So the parking requirements in the zoning bylaw speak to warehousing and storage, but they do not explicitly call out self-storage. So we're varying the warehousing and storage.
If warehousing goes in, would that change the parking? So there's lots of trucks coming and going all of a sudden, and there's people handling packages, and it's a warehouse all of a sudden, and there's 12 employees.
If they're changing that, then they have to completely change the shell, which is for a self-storage building. So they would likely be coming back to us for a DP, a new DP.
Would it fit in the existing zoning? So it's called,
That use is permitted,
it's
yeah.
called self-storage,
they would not require rezoning.
turn it into a warehouse.
They'd require a new DP. I think that's what Asia said. I will go now to the public or the proponent if they'd like to speak to the variances of the development permit. So in a process like this, the development permit itself isn't for public comment, but the variance is for public comment. So if there's someone who'd like to come and speak to the variance, please put your hand up, not voting and state your name if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Good evening, Council. My name is Larry Podhor. I'm an architect speaking on behalf of the developer. And I just wanted to clarify that by convention and engineering analysis by the Institute of Transport Engineers, which cover basically North America, this building typology was studied and was found to require no more than 0.014 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. So we're right there on that standard, and that standard is actually plentiful in that sense. So I just wanted to make sure that that it's understood that this is exclusively a self-storage facility. And in fact, further to your comment about changing the use, the way that the space is demised inside is very unique. The structure is short span, so to turn it into another use would be highly problematic technically. My last point, I think, is to address some of the sustainability and green issues. I'm hoping that we're presenting kind of the best of all worlds in an industrial area like this. We're providing activation of the building itself through an intensive use like office. We have a substantial component, which is the self-storage, that is highly automated and requires virtually no energy to run and is highly secure, and the perimeter is insulated, durable material, concrete, so it is sustainable in the long term. And as far as the on-grade improvements that we had made, they're not just amenities, they're also speaking directly to the environment and making sure that we can shed the water effectively and use it effectively as well. The reason that it is very difficult to justify green roofs is just because of the sheer size and the security that would be required to get up on the roof. It's 50,000 square feet of roof, so we have to take a practical approach here. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the variance in the development permit? I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the variance? I'll ask for a third time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the variance? Don't see any more hands. Council, what's your interest on this file? I will move that we approve the DP with the variance, parking variance. Seconded by Councillor Elliott. Councillor Schmidt?
I'm definitely opposed to having self-storage on this massive lot, just for the plan, and it has nothing, which I know I have no say in because of the zoning, so I do appreciate that there was some consideration for some employment space in the I-8, and I don't mind the variance in the parking. I agree with the proponents that it's not necessarily going to be a huge parking lot with self-storage. My biggest concern is that people are going to be driving here on a regular basis to store their toys. They can't fit in their downtown, so that there's going to be a ton of driving to this area. And would prefer that storage solutions be found closer to home, but I will approve this variance.
Anyone else want to speak to it? Don't see it. So the DP with variance is on the floor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks very much. Moving on. Bylaws, second reading, District of Squamish District Plan Bylaw number 2100, 2009, Amendment Bylaw, Waterfront Landing Sub-Area Plan number 2483, 2016.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to introduce Susan Stratis, who is our consultant planner working for the district on this application, to go over the presentation for second reading.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Susan Stratis, and I'm just going to walk through the update to the zoning and sub-area plan bylaws for Waterfront Landing. Just give me a second again to, here we are. So our purpose today is to look at both the sub-area plan bylaw 2483 and the zoning amendment bylaw 2484. There have been revisions made to both these bylaws since first reading, and I will walk through the changes to the bylaws. And the second purpose on the council resolutions is to set a public hearing date, and I've got that in red because on your council agenda it actually says June 27th, 2016. So just bring that to your attention. The property that we're looking at is at 1500 Highway 99. It's 21 hectares or 53 acres on the east side of Manquam Blind Channel. The process to date goes back to August 2016 when the application was submitted. The Committee of the Whole received a presentation in October 2016, followed by a public information meeting in November. Through October and February, the staff have been working through a number of technical reports submitted by the applicants, and a number of revisions have been made to the project. On March 7th, the project was brought back to the Community Development Committee with a number of revisions from the first time it was seen. And on May 2nd, the project was brought forward for first reading of both bylaws. That was followed by an ADP review on May 4th, and the ADP expressed a number of concerns with the project. We brought the project back to the Committee of the Whole on May 23rd and had an informal discussion, and issues were raised both by council, and we went over some of the ADP issues as well. So the applicants have made a number of revisions, and that is what we're bringing forward tonight. So just to reiterate, the property is within the downtown designation of the current OCP, and no change is proposed to that. And the downtown designation supports a mix of multifamily, commercial, and residential park civic uses. Right now, there is a sub-area plan in place for the property and a zoning bylaw in place that allows up to 1,200 multiple dwelling units. This was what we call the lagoon option that was previously approved. It does contain a small commercial node at the south end and allows for live work and marine industrial uses. The CD40 zone that's in place is very specific to that development plan, so both the sub-area plan and the CD40 zone are being amended. So the development that is proposed is again a mixed-use residential and commercial neighborhood, providing for up to 1,000 multiple residential units. A minimum, oh, there's a mistake there, that should say 50,000 square feet rather than 50,000 square feet of commercial space. 2 major public parks on the waterfront. It has an internal road access with public roads that have separated sidewalks and bike paths. The housing is clustered with internal parks and an internal trail system, and all units are intended to be within a 5-minute walk of the waterfront. The project also includes a significant amenity, which is the pedestrian drawbridge to downtown. So the bylaws, as I just mentioned, that were given first reading on May 2nd were the OCP, the sub-area plan, which also contained new DPA 10 guidelines for the area, and the new CD40 zone, both of which would rescind the existing bylaws and replace them with the new ones. So a number of changes have been made to the bylaws in front of you for second reading. In terms of timing, the sub-area plan contains a phasing schedule, and the pedestrian bridge, which was originally in phase 4, has been brought forward to the end of phase 2. The commercial is now expressed as a minimum of 50,000 square feet. Previously, it was intended to be 50,000 square feet. It's now a minimum. The residential build-out, which was originally 850, has moved to 950 to 1,100 units, and a minimum of 50% of those are now apartment. Previously, it was more oriented toward, it was 30% apartments, more oriented to townhouses. There's an increased extent of mixed commercial uses, which I'll show on a map in a second. South of the Marine Village along the waterfront, there is a new live-work area designated in the Marine Village. And on Laurelwood toward the waterfront, there's additional mixed commercial use. There is also additional higher density housing south of the Marine Village on the waterfront and along the bluff. 3 new apartment sites have been designated since first reading. We have also changed the policy to allow apartments in the mixed density residential. We had previously called that townhouse and decided to be less specific, calling it a mixed density residential, which will allow apartments to be developed there as well, again trying to up the density and the housing mix in the project. And the phasing has been revised and the amenity timing has been revised primarily to bring that pedestrian bridge to the main downtown area forward. And another change that has been made is public parking is now required by policy at both waterfront parks. So these maps illustrate the, I'll struggle with, at first reading, this was the land use schedule for the sub-area plan, and the drawing on the right shows the changes. So the mixed-use commercial extends right along this section of Laurelwood to the waterfront, allowing for commercial development adjacent to the waterfront park. And the commercial area here that previously had an apartment was kind of separated. There was commercial, then an apartment, then townhouses, has been broadened out. So the commercial area is larger. This is the mixed, the live-work units, and the townhouse area is gone, replaced with an apartment designation and a commitment to commercial use as part of this. And it may not look like this strip, it's a policy and a development permit stage. The extent of that commercial will be worked out. So the additional apartment unit on here against the bluff is the other primary change. And following ADP comments, we've also formalized the requirement for public parking adjacent to both parks. And that will be, the exact shape of that will be determined at development permit stage. And all of these things will also be secured in the land development agreement. The phasing plan, after the feedback from council, the bridge has now changed to phase 2. And there is a letter attached to your agenda from BOZA indicating why it needs to take place as part of phase 2. So the phasing will, the north part of the site is still where the majority of development will begin. It will start here in phase 1 and move to the waterfront in phase 2. But as part of this phase 2 development, they will then be completing this bridge. And as their letter explains, there's just a practical need to secure the site and to build out this road to keep it safe before they can really bring that bridge, finish constructing that bridge and have somewhere for people to go safely. So just in terms of the changes to the overall land use that is proposed, the main changes take place in the amount of commercial, which the mixed-use commercial goes from 4.2% to 11.6% of the land base. The apartments don't change a lot in terms of land base, but they do change in terms of percentage of units. So they go up to 11.6% of the base, and the mixed density, which is the townhouse-oriented units, have decreased from 51% down to 42%, and the other parks and so on remain the same. The zoning bylaw follows a similar pattern of changes to the sub-area plan, again with the extension of commercial here and at the Marine Village, and with the small portion at the south, and with the additional multifamily here against the bluff. So the zoning bylaw more or less mirrors the sub-area plan. A few other changes were made to the text of both the zoning and the OCP amendment, which are itemized in the staff report. The sub-area plan uses the term higher density residential now instead of apartment to be more, to recognize that there may be different types of buildings there. The term mixed-use commercial has been used instead of Marine Village commercial because it is applying throughout the site, not just at the Marine Village. Flex space commercial policy has been added. And we've added some clarification that the exact pathway widths and park programming, etc., will be determined at the detailed design stage. We did receive some comments that regarding the parks, and really they are just green blobs at this stage until we get to development permit stage. What goes on, how wide each pathway is, etc., won't be determined. The zoning bylaw similarly now uses the term higher density residential, and the townhouse area has been changed to mixed density residential. Live work has been added, and a few of the definitions have been refined for clarity. There was some struggle with a couple of the wording in the zoning, so we've changed a couple of those. The intent hasn't changed, however. This is just this is the phasing and amenities structure that we are using that will ultimately get built into the land development agreement, showing when each of the major amenities and the infrastructure will be brought into the project. And the main change here is to bring that pedestrian bridge forward to phase 2B. The non-market housing is highlighted mainly because the yellow ones are the two areas where the community amenity contributions will be allocated. That's why they're in yellow. There is actually no change. Non-market housing was proposed in phase 3 originally. So the recommendations at this stage are to give the bylaws, both the OCP amendment and the zoning bylaws, second reading as amended, and that the public hearing be scheduled for Tuesday, June 27th, 2017 at the Squamish Senior Center, and that subject to the public hearing results, third reading and adoption be considered following completion of the land development agreement, flood covenant, environmental covenant, railway noise and vibration covenant, and the statutory right-of-way for public access. That's my compressed presentation on this project.
Thank you very much. Questions for clarification purposes for staff? Councillor Pryor and Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to compliment staff on this one. I think they've done a really good job. And the proponent. I guess the page I want to see is the one that has all the amenities and when you get them, that one there. You know, the green shores on this development is really stellar. And the parking, 2 parking stalls per unit, something we haven't seen anywhere else. One of the concerns I have is the railroad bridge. I brought this up a couple of times, and the kids getting to school. That is going to be an issue. I mean, I don't know who has to deal with it and how we're going to deal with it, but the kids are going across that railroad bridge to school. I mean, that's not really a question, it's an observation. And also, if you read in the fine print here, it's going to be a LEEDs design, so it'll be probably coming in at a level.
Councillor Pryor, we're going to try to do questions for clarification purposes, and then if you have statements.
Is it going to be coming in like at a stage 3 in the new?
Step code?
Yeah, step code. No, it says LEEDs.
That'll be more at a building permit.
That will be a decision that the district will have to make when it applies the step code to, in general, to installers.
And so on this page here, you know, if you look at the phasing of our amenities, the big one to me is the pedestrian bridge. And if you go back, you know, like lots of it, you know, like phase 4, A, B, and C, I mean, this is like 15 years out or 10 years out, so. I've been here long enough that I don't get excited about any of the amenities because usually we're so far out.
Is there a question in there, Councillor Pryor?
On the bridge, if you go back to the picture of the bridge, it says we're not getting the bridge until phase 2. And I think we can have half of the bridge in phase 1 and the other half in phase 2. I'd just like to see that bridge activated more. You know, why don't we get something out of one of these developments soon?
Yeah.
There are some major infrastructure costs up front for this development to build the overpass over the CN Railway. And I believe there's got to be some recuperation before they can proceed with the rest of the plan. It also impacts the way the rest of the plan gets developed. So the proponents have worked with us to bring the bridge from phase 4 to now phase 2. But as I understand that, it's as earliest as they could provide it.
Well, I just don't, you know, when you see phase 1 and 2, it says we don't get it till the end of phase 2, which is 300 units. I mean, I don't see any hindrance between the bridge and phase 2. I mean, it's easy for me to say it's going to be safe, but I do think we can get phase 1. I mean, why don't we get the first half of the bridge?
So I appreciate your comments, Councillor Clare, but we're trying to get questions for clarification purposes. When we actually debate second reading, those are when the issues you're talking about can come up. So do you have any questions for clarification purposes?
Yes. So this has been to the ADP once, and I'm very pleased at the changes since then. So when does it go back to ADP?
This will go back to the development permit stage if it gets adopted by council.
So at phase.
Councillor Elliott, I'll come back to you, Councillor Elliott.
So in the description of the flood protection measures, I know that we're capturing a 15-meter setback in the zoning bylaw and the DPA guidelines. Is it also going to be captured in the land development agreement? Just to really make sure it's there.
It could be captured, but it's pretty safe in the zoning bylaw.
Okay, just because we run into problems with that.
Yes, thankfully aware.
I think we're going for something better than pretty safe.
Well, I just want to
We
make
will-
sure
we
we
will
don't get
capture
the
it in the
first
land development.
EP on this, and suddenly someone's telling us we don't have 15 years. That's all I want to, so if we need to put in a land development agreement, I want to put in a land development agreement. I know that we've moved to 50% of the total being apartment units. And so I'm just trying, and we changed the definition from apartment to mixed density residential, I think you said.
Yes.
So does that capture all types of housing forms? Like, are we going to see maybe, do triplexes count as apartments? Or are we just going to see apartment buildings or fourplexes? Or like, are we going to see different forms of housing or just townhouses and apartments?
The definition in your zoning bylaw already for townhouses allows for groups of 2, 3, 4 units together. So that already has quite a variation in types. And the apartments proposed here are probably going to be 4 to 6 stories, most of them. There's going to be some variation, but I think most of the variation in housing will happen in the lower density areas. And again, they may be configured as groups of 2, 3, 4, and that will be determined at the DP stage.
So that is not, so we're not on the same page, so providing variety in the neighborhood is about maybe building something that looks like a single family home that has 4 separate units in it. So it doesn't look like a townhome, it looks like a single family home, but it's just a different form of housing, still higher density, but creates variety rather than apartment blocks and rows of townhomes. That's what I mean by a fourplex.
I believe that would be captured under your townhouse definition, however. It doesn't, the townhouse definition doesn't require them to be in a row. They can be stacked. They just have to have a common wall under your definition. So they could be configured different ways. And I think that one of the changes we made between first and second reading was we did add some language to the policy and DP guidelines regarding variation and lack of uniformity in the housing, or I forget the word we used, to avoid homogeneous appearance. It's up to the applicants at the DP stage to respond to that and show how they're doing it. I think, unfortunately, a lot of this doesn't play out until the DP stage.
So in moving to having 50% of this apartment units, and given that we have a very young population of families, are we designating how many of those apartments have to be 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom in order to accommodate families, not just singles or couples? We certainly seen that in the Sirocco bill.
Through the mayor to question, we're not at that stage again. In the affordable housing, we have had the applicants give us a rundown of how that's going to break down. There's going to be everything from studios to 3 bedrooms. But for the rest of the apartments, that will be determined at the time of development permit, and that's the time to raise those questions. There are general policies, however, asking for housing that meets a variety of age groups and lifestyles, and kind of a broad policy for us to fall back on. If we were, for instance, to get an apartment with all 1 or 2 bedroom units, I think we would fall back on the policy and say you're not meeting the policy intent.
If I may add to that, we could capture the need for variation in units in the land development agreement. That would give us some more certainty around making sure that there is variation. There's more than just policy. So we can certainly do that.
Thank you. I wrote down the 5,000 square feet in different locations, but it's all spread. Can you go to the red parking? This one? Perfect. My question was about the height of the apartment building that's next to the commercial space. Has any height been designated for the apartment buildings yet? I don't mind the ones around along the bluffs at all.
In the zoning bylaw, I'm showing you the sub-area plan map, but they're actually very similar. There's a small area here where the zoning height is limited to 2 stories because they purposely want to keep a low scale of development. And it goes up to 6 stories here in these mixed-use buildings. So the general progression is 2 stories, 4 stories as you move down here, and these are maximums, and 4 to 6 stories over here.
And then the apartment building next to the 4 stories, is it also 4 stories? On the waterfront there, I can't read the lot.
Yes, it can go up to 4 stories.
So 4 stories is where it's at.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The other thing is, Karen only brought up the schools and families, and I'm curious if there's any education space or small buildings for education that are on the site that will be walkable. And with a pedestrian bridge, I'm wondering how kids will get to school in the first phase.
In the first phase, it's going to be very tricky. There was a traffic impact assessment done early in the project, and I guess several council meetings back, I did bring the plan forward that showed they did look at walking routes to school. That was part of the requirements for your traffic impact assessment. And the maps showed that there's ultimately going to be a big improvement in walking to school, but that improvement isn't going to happen until the crossing here is built, and also the crossing along Laurelwood. Until that time, it's going to be business as usual, which is tricky and really relies on the highway.
Has there been conversations with the school board to discuss putting EDU space on this piece of land, since it is considered downtown? And can you go back to the description of what a downtown zoning is?
Almost
Lots
there.
of builds. There it
Here
is.
we are.
Commercial uses, retail shops, restaurants, education facilities, places of worship, parks, recreational facilities, and municipal offices and facilities. So it does fulfill quite a few of those points, except for the one thing that does concern me is the amount of density on that particular lot. I'm happy with the commercial now. I'm happy with the expansion of the commercial space. I don't mind the apartments, and I agree with my other colleagues on having the mixed density through, as opposed to blocks of townhouses. But I'm curious if there was conversations with the school board on education space, or having a small lot for a maybe accessory education facility, even if it's a recreational, like some of the addressing of the program needs for the education.
Through the mayor, we did refer the bylaws, and we did an early referral to the school district and did not have any response from the school district. Have not met with them. But one thing we have done in the zoning for the project, and I'll just move up if it's okay to go back to the one that shows the red. In that red area is a property where the applicants want to put an amenity building that serves the neighborhood. And we have revised the zoning slightly for that amenity building. It was originally came in as something that was proposed just to serve the residents, I think, of a typical strata building. And they've now agreed to put commercial space in there, and through the land development agreement, we expect to secure some of that space for public facilities, which are also permitted. It's called an assembly use in your zoning bylaw, and so we've added that to the permitted uses, basically for all of the med areas. So that
would reduce the commercial space though?
Well, that one was never really meant to be a commercial building in the first place. It was meant to be an amenity building to serve the residents, and we had some.
But it's included in the 50,000.
No, it's not. It's separate from the 50,000, but it does allow for commercial use, and it also allows for community rentals and that type of thing. So we're hoping it will become actually a broader-based community space rather than just a building to serve the strata residents.
Can you give it another go, referring it to the school board? I know it may not change anything, but if they have concerns, it's probably a good time to express them.
They were just sent a referral out a week ago. So.
Councillor Blackmore.
Is there any requirement in this project for a certain amount of market rates, purpose-built rental units?
No, the affordable housing is the non-market rental unit, non-water rental units.
Okay.
Nothing more? Councillor Elliott?
Is childcare considered? This is a huge neighborhood, and once it's fully developed, and we are sorely lacking in good childcare space. And so I'm wondering if that maybe building contemplates childcare or somewhere else on the site.
Childcare is permitted in all of the commercial districts on the site. So if somebody wants to open a childcare center, there's certainly spaces for that to happen. The applicants have talked early in the project that they actually like to put childcare in their developments, but that's not something that we've secured. It's something that has been talked about, the spaces there for it.
You know, it's a challenge because the space gets very expensive very quickly, and childcare providers have difficulty securing space when it goes in. When it's not purpose built for them, and having that. So, anyway, it's just something to consider, is that this will be a very big neighborhood. And also I noticed that the setbacks have changed for the townhouse units, and the bars have changed, and is that to accommodate more apartments, or why would the setbacks change?
The setbacks for townhouses only were changed from 6 meters to 5.8 meters, which is fairly standard in your zoning bylaw for townhouses. It still allows for a car to be parked outside on the driveway, and it was just a design consideration that they found the 6 meters wasn't working. Many of your CD zones already have 5.8 meters. Change it to 5.8. And I forget the other one that changed. The 5.8 is the one that we spent time on because we need to make sure you can park a vehicle, and 5.8 is allows you to do that.
Park a vehicle or a pickup truck? Because that's where our multifamily run into trouble.
I know.
Is that people have big trucks, not cars. And so that's why I was just.
I don't know that you'll have an answer for this, but it's a matter of curiosity. I know that they're talking about doing horizontal drilling to put a sewer force main underneath the Malcolm Blind Channel. Where might that tie in on the other side, the downtown side?
I'll direct that to Dave Merrill, who's the expert in it.
Dave, you can sit right beside Christine, I think.
Through the mayor, that's the current plan that's contemplated, would be to directionally drill from sort of the northern corner of the property underneath the channel, and then it would tie in onto Pemberton, basically directly across. There is a consideration for the timing of the Pemberton Bridge. If that, it is very unlikely, but if that does move forward, the sewer line could be incorporated into the bridge design, but it's likely that it'll be directionally drilled.
That would be early on in the project.
That would be before occupancy.
Thanks.
That's okay.
Thank you. So, only clarification purposes.
We're just trying to get questions answered so that we can then go into deliberation afterwards. So, do you have a question for clarification purposes?
I'll wait for deliberation.
Deliberations, okay. Councillor Elliott?
Lost it. Oh, there was. It says despite bylaw S429 and the zoning bylaw definition of usable open space, private usable open space in CD40 zone should be provided. Is it really, I didn't go back and look up our definition of usable open space. I'm just curious why that's in there.
Through the mayor, that's one of the clarifications I guess we put in, because the general bylaw definition is, first of all, quite confusing, and secondly, doesn't fit the type of open space that is proposed for this site. Unfortunately, I don't have all the plans up on display here, but the proposal here is to include a lot of these small green parks that are common open space shared between groups of units. So the zoning bylaw has quite a number of configurations for private open space for different developments. They're all over the place, and they range from 10 square meters, is it 10 square meters per unit, up to 30. And given the grouping of open space that has been done on these properties, actually I do have further down, I've got a map showing what that looks like. We felt that 10 meters works quite well for this development because there is all of these internal parks that are shared common space. So the 10 square meters per unit is their deck space, for instance, but they still have all these additional strata parks and trails. So we felt that was workable. It's 10 meters is in place for quite a few of your other townhouse developments.
It says 10% in here, so it's not on a
sorry,
percentage basis, but that's what you're.
I'm
you're
working
meaning.
from memory here, and I meant, when I'm saying 10 square meters, I mean 10%.
10% of gross
Yes.
floor area, okay.
Yes. So it's related to the size of the unit, it goes up as the units go up.
Thank you.
Any other questions for clarification purposes? Seeing none, council, what's your pleasure?
I'd like some comments.
Sure. Well, do you want to put a motion on the floor so we're commenting on something? Anybody?
I'll move second reading.
Moved by Councilor Ray, second by Councilor Spa. Welcome back to you, Councilor Ray.
Sure.
Councilor Price.
Thank you. And I sat through the ADP when the ADP discussed this, and I'm really pleased at how many changes came through from all the good comments that came from all the smart people. So I see the list in our package here, and I know that staff and council and everybody has read it all. But, I mean, to staff on the ADP is, and I know we discussed it a little bit, is the ADP getting the message through to council on these bigger developments? Do you think that the way we just write down the list of comments is good enough for council on these big developments?
I think so, they're all captured in the report. So we don't spend much time. I mean, we've had a whole meeting around the ADP comments previous to this one. So I think I'm getting a feeling that the council understands what the ADP have to say about it.
Yeah, I feel like we missed the passion of it, that's all. Anyway, I'll park that for a second. And I'm going to go back to the bridge just because Councillor Chappelle said something that I thought may help me. I mean, I would really like to see this bridge sooner than later, and there's no question about that. And you start talking about getting the kids to school. I am really worried about that railroad bridge, and you know, you can see, I suggested potentially a floating bridge right underneath the railroad bridge or beside it so the kids can get to school, because they're going over that railroad bridge. But if we had the pedestrian bridge sooner, they would go over the pedestrian bridge. So that's something just for staff to talk to the proponents about. And then, you know, so that's the safety of that. And in the ADP comments, which I think staff and the proponent caught a lot of, there was a lot of comments about more commercial uses amongst all of the developments, so that you have daycares on the corner or a bookkeeper on the corner down there and all that kind of stuff. And I think that came out, so I'm happy with that. The biggest thing to me is getting that bridge done sooner. Okay? So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rice.
Thank you. I was also pleased to see the modifications, keeping in mind that this is second reading and not third reading. The threshold for me is lower. I was happy to see the bridge move forward in timing. I was one of the councillors that commented on that. And I can see the difficulty of moving it much farther earlier than it is right now, when the road network is not attached to it. And the difficulty of building half a bridge, in other words, starting at the other side and just building a pier out, creates all kinds of issues about mobilizing equipment and stuff like that, and I can see the impracticality of that. So this, for me, is in a good position to go forward to public hearing, so I will be supporting this motion.
Thanks, I agree with those sentiments of second reading and wanting to hear from the public. I also agree with Councillor Pryor. I would like to see, if you're going to be building a community, you can't, they really need pedestrian walkways to access services. And the services aren't being built until, if I'm correct, the services aren't being built till the third or fourth stage. Like a commercial space is not being built till even later in the stages, which is also brings up the point that that pedestrian bridge needs to access services where everybody's getting in their car and driving around downtown. So if there aren't any services and no schools and no public places of worship and anything that makes it downtown, the very first thing that needs to be built is access to services. So I would like to see the bridge being moved out. And I understand it's complicated and expensive, but I'm sure the capital can be found somewhere. So I'm looking for that bridge to move up another phase. As long as you're building housing, it needs access. And I'm willing to support it for moving forward to public hearing.
And so, just to clarify, we've moved second reading of the OCP. I'm happy to entertain comments on both the zoning bylaw and the OCP, but it is the OCP that's currently on the floor. Councillor Buckingham.
Okay, I think this development, it's a very good development in terms of its layout and its mixture of uses. I don't expect it to be a Granville Island. I think that, we have our downtown for that, but I do appreciate some of the modifications. I will say, though, that I do think that we can do better on the housing amenities. And I might like to make a couple suggestions. So first of all, given the scale of this development, I think it's important that we do have a provision that requires a certain percentage of the units to be purpose-built rental at market rates. We've seen this in other developments that are much smaller, and they achieved, I think some of them about 10%. So something like that I think would be very helpful for the community. Rental accommodation is highly in demand, and purpose-built is very stable as opposed to the secondary market, which is very subject to the whims of the market. And we know that the economics are changing more in favor of rentals, so that it's less of a burden for the private sector. And secondly, in terms of the non-market housing, I think we could do a little bit better in terms of the number of units. And what comes to mind is if you think about some of the marquee projects, that are waterfront projects in Vancouver, a lot of those projects, about 20% of the units are non-market housing. So if you take this project, for example, 20%, that'd be 173 units. So if we can somewhere get closer to that, I know that it's a give and take, but I think 50 is a little bit on the low side. And the interim policy on amenity contributions is mostly geared towards small infill projects. And so this one, a little bit different. Margins are a bit different on a waterfront site. So, but other than that, I think the rest of the project is quite desirable.
Yeah, this is the second reading. I'm happy to move this forward to public hearing. I do share concerns about pedestrian and cycling access from the site, particularly in the early phases. I'm not sure a pedestrian bridge is going to dissuade kids from using the rail bridge because that's the more direct route to get to the schools. So I do think that we need to seriously look at that bridge at Laurel. And we may want to think of that sooner rather than later. If we have to put the water main in there anyway, it might be a lot cheaper to go under a bridge than under a channel, and there may be some good reasons why we want to move that project forward. And I'm not sure where we are with that analysis, but maybe that's just a wink and a nudge to staff to, we may want to move that into the DCC bylaw and move that forward sooner rather than later. But at this point, this is certainly supportable. I think it's come a long way, and I do appreciate all the comments. I would like to echo and support what Councillor Blackman-Wolf said about the market and non-market purpose-built rental and affordable housing. This is not an infill development. This is a large-scale development, and we should be able to make sure we're addressing those needs in these types of developments. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'll support second reading, although I still would like to see childcare somehow accommodated for. I think that's not a need. I'm interested to see, based on Councillor Blackman-Wolf's comments about purpose-built rental, how that can fit into the mix. But looking forward to hearing the public comments on this.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands, so I'll call the question on the OCP second reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the zoning bylaw, second reading, and that the public hearing date for both of those be June 27th. The Squamish Senior Center, and then there's a whole bunch of subject to the public hearing, but that will become subject to the public hearing. Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. I think we've commented on this already, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is adoption. We have District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw number 2012-2007. Amendment bylaw 2538-2017. Move adoption. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Staff reports, Finance, Squamish Arts Council Service Agreement Fund. It's like, I don't know, it's cold, hot, it's not just crazy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Devin Guest. I'm the Film and Event Manager here at the District of Squamish. Before I begin tonight's report, I'd like to acknowledge Cindy Lyons, Chair of the Squamish Arts Council, who's in attendance this evening. Staff are here tonight with the following objective to receive.
Is it on that screen?
No.
No. Is that the same?
Yeah, pushing button. Is it pushing button or something?
Oh, you know what? We have a couple of sticks going on here. Just excellent. So staff are here tonight with the following objective: to receive authorization from the council to enter into a service agreement with the Squamish Arts Council for the provision of arts programming in the community, and are here to present the following recommendation for consideration: that the District of Squamish enter into a service agreement with Squamish Arts Council for the provision of arts programming not currently provided by the district, and that the District of Squamish provide to the Squamish Arts Council a one-time payment of $25,000 fee for startup and administration of the programming, and that mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement. The district, some background, the district has been in discussion with the SAC regarding expanding arts program opportunities available to the community of Squamish subsequent to the discussion during the 2017 financial planning process. At the January 23rd Committee of the Whole, the committee agreed to cede $25,000 funded from prior year's surplus to improve SAC operations develop capacity in the organization, leverage grant opportunities for further opportunities, and ultimately towards the provision of expanding arts programming to the District of Squamish. Council ratified the following motion on February 7th. Some high-level project information. Staff and representatives from the SAC met a number of times through the spring to develop an agreement to expand arts programming provided to the community. From these discussions, a list of deliverables and commitments were developed and formed Schedule A to the agreement attached to this report. Key to the success of the model is the commitment from the SAC to leverage the vast array of talents within the Squamish arts community to provide classes and workshops for programs that are not readily available through the District of Squamish's programming opportunities. The district has committed to providing the space that will be needed to run the programs in district facilities where this can be accommodated. Additionally, some brand new opportunities are being looked at. As such, working with Squamish Youth to provide 2 annual art workshops aimed at developing artistic abilities in youth at the youth center and provide without charge to the participants. As well, the approval of and expanded hours at the senior center. Staff and Arts Council will look to develop adult-oriented arts programming within that facility. The District of Squamish has committed to advertising the programs being offered, including advertising the name of the instructor in the REC program guide and collecting the fees paid by the program participants and subsequently providing those fees to the program instructors. Again, some high-level implications, budget implementation. The service agreement fee is assigned to the 2017 budget only, funded from accumulated surplus. And from an implementation perspective, Recreation staff are working with the Arts Council to develop programming and locations for the start of the fall. In terms of organizational impact and policies, oversight of the agreement and the program provisions will be split by both the Manager of Film and Events and the Director of Rec Services. The Arts Council will work directly with rec programming to identify program needs and gaps that will work to identify venues to run the programs within the district facilities and parks. This is in line with many of the current OCP policies that relate to supporting arts as well as partnering initiatives. An alternative to the provided recommendations in front of Council is that Council directs staff to cancel the service agreement and look at providing arts programming to the community through an alternative model. I will leave you, with that I'll conclude with the initial motion on the screen for Mayor and Council to consider.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? I don't see any. Anyone like to move by Councillor Chevelle?
No, it's well, any other questions?
Second by Councillor Elliott. Do you have some questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. How, with the Arts Council, are they going to be, I'm worried about competing with local businesses that have struggles in making, some local businesses that are supplying arts education, and that the Arts Council's competing with local businesses as opposed to supplementing the holes in the community for arts education.
So this isn't meant to replace things like the Squamish Academy of Music or anything like that. This is filling the gaps that have been identified, programming gaps to our recreation staff or within the Arts Council community themselves, where they've had people come to them and say, hey, I'd like to take a watercolor course, that type of thing.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a great step in the right direction. It still feels a little bit token-ish. I think there's still a lot of growth in this particular department. It's been underserved. Sort of the creative aspect of the recreation services that we've been providing has been underserved, and so I'm glad to see this move forward. I actually think this will help make some of places like Squamish Academy of Music, they could be actually, the Arts Council could be sort of organizing and funneling it, but they could be actually contracting Squamish County Music to deliver some of these programs too, depending on how it goes. So I think it's very complimentary, and we've got the Arts Council stepping up and really showing leadership on this front. So I appreciate the work staff's done and the work that Sydney and her team has done as well. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So next up, we are on Economic Development Hardware for Business Action Plan.
Good evening, Mayor Heitzman and Council. My name is Catherine Milligan. I'm the Economic Development Officer for the District of Squamish. I'm here to seek a resolution from Council that Council adopt Hardwired for Business Economic Development Action Plan 2017-2019 and direct staff to commence the implementation of the document. This was brought to Committee of the Whole on, I believe it was May 16th, and following feedback and considerations, I put together a short presentation, and I can quickly take you through that just to clarify some of the questions that were brought up as part of Committee of the Whole. Some of the questions that we heard were how is economic development actually defined in the plan? How is business retention and expansion addressed? What will the outcome of a key account strategy be? How can we ensure that the plan is action-oriented, that we'll see action out of the plan, and that it's not simply a strategy? What is the purpose and composition of the staff's level steering group that is proposed? And what is the definition of infrastructure within the plan? And then should Squamish have a separate economic development entity outside of district services? The two last questions were answered at Committee of the Whole, so I have slides to support those questions should we want to go through them, but for the sake of time, I'll start with the ones where it was not clearly addressed. So the definition of economic development from the actual plan and the premise of the plan is that it's sustainable development, and it's development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It's really looking at economic development from an environmental, social, and economic impact. It's considering those factors when making decisions that obviously affect our community and economic development. From a business retention and expansion perspective, one of the questions was how does the plan address business retention and expansion for local businesses that are here in Squamish today? The plan really focuses in on improving existing business health and growth opportunities. Essentially, the entire foundation of the plan is focusing on creating a positive business climate with the right conditions for growth. And that means creating partnerships that support local business growth, developing and sharing data and intelligence that supports local business, and eliminating red tape, and streamlining process for existing businesses. You can find more information about the actual activities, core activities within the plan. You'll see that on page 17 of the document that is attached to the report. The key account strategy. One of the priority activities that are outlined in the plan is a key account strategy. And the outcome of a key account strategy is really to be able to assign priority to the work that we do. And when I say the work that we do, I mean the work that the district and its partners undertake. So it's to use evidence-based decision-making, establish a set of criteria so that we can see the opportunities before us and actually be able to look at those opportunities in a consistent manner. It really assumes limited resource capacity so that it doesn't actually impede on opportunities. So we actually see the full value of the opportunity, and then we decide on the resources that we can apply to it. It acts as a communication tool and as a tool that I can share with council, with other internal staff, to be able to look at opportunities that are presented to the community. And then also, it provides a rationale for resources. So when I talk about criteria, when I can define that, I could say, well, it might be the number of jobs that it would bring to the community, or it might be the length a resource company may be in business here. And it could also be the environmental or social impact, positive impact that it could make for the community. And this really is then a way to say, okay, this is how we should support these opportunities as we move forward as a community. It also takes consideration of the OCP and what communities' values are and their priorities through the OCP, as well as council's strategic vision. So the idea with the key account strategy is that we're able to set out, this is what's important to the community. Here's what we see are priority sectors for development or opportunities that are presenting in our community, province, or our country. And then also looking at it through another lens in terms of the local impact or economic impact. Action is an outcome, so the plan is really about action. The action plan is an output of the Economic Review and Action Plan that was approved by Council in the fall of 2016, and it's meant as a framework and approach to set the right conditions for economic growth. And it's recognized that the district cannot do this alone. This is actually a collaborative approach, and the reason is that we rely heavily on other economic development agencies and organizations to actually undertake economic development activities in our community. It really draws on the expertise, mandates, and roles that partners play in economic development. And to that, one of the ways that the plan works to collaborate with our partners is by creating a steering group. That steering group has a mandate to increase the quality of life for all community members by providing strategic advice and supporting implementation of sustainable economic development. That mandate correlates with the mandate that's for our district economic development services. And really, it's meant to not only advise, but actually to implement the plan that's contained within the strategy. So the work plan is using Hardwired for Business District of Squamish Economic Action Plan, provide advice on the development and support the implementation of core and priority activities. One of the questions was the composition of the steering group, and I have the composition here for you. District of Squamish Economic Development, Province of BC Economic Development, and Squamish Nation would be at the table as a liaison. Under people, business, place, which are the three pillars that support the plan and the plan's outcomes, we would have a number of organizations that support each of those pillars. From there would be also additional consultation with council committees, sector-specific association, business operators, and the community at large. This would be a working staff level committee, just to clarify. And the goal would be when we do have a particular initiative at hand or project at hand, that we would draw on the expertise that are within the community that are outside of the regular steering group. So the recommendation is that Council adopt Hardwired for Business Economic Development Action Plan 2017-2019 and direct staff to commence implementation of the document. I can follow up with the other two points of clarification if anybody would like, or take questions at this time. Thank you.
We have gone over this quite a bit, and I do appreciate, I think the final version of it was really slick and lean. Any questions from council? Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, just a quick question, Caitlin. I think you mentioned this in your presentation at committee as a whole, but I mean, economic development really is about lifting everybody. And so when you think about the composition of that committee, how do we bring in voices, and I'm thinking about our newcomers, so immigrants to the community who may have language barriers but want to work and that sort of thing, and also youth. And then I know a number of our not-for-profits are looking at work accommodation programs, so providing opportunities for people with higher barriers, but so for instance, Helping Hands working with Target Homes to make sure people can work through that. And I'm wondering, is there is this a committee, or how do we do that consultation so that we don't forget that there's, you know, more vulnerable people that really do want to be part of our growth as well?
Mayor, if I may. I think that this is going to be addressed in the work that we do. One of the pillars is people, which is all around skills, training, and local employment. And it's recognizing that you know, part of the measurement in terms of our success is actually looking at priority population, whether that be youth or immigrants, and actually seeing a measured increase in the participation rate in the labor force. So I think that that's one key way or one key win. From the steering group specifically, I would identify that Work BC, Sea to Sky Community Services are two partners that are going to help serve that, I guess, that aspect of the people pillar, as well as ensuring that resources are available in the business pillar.
Thank you. Councillor Bryan.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you got this page up, and I'm not a big fan of steering committees, so I don't take it personal. You know, I see the list up there, and if you get Squamish Nation to the table, phone me and I'm going to come down. If you get the province to the table, phone me and I'll come down, because those guys aren't showing up. Community Futures, Chamber of Commerce, Downtown BIA, Tourism Squamish, man, we've been sitting at the table with those groups for 25 years. The good thing, you know, I'll have to say, when you said skills training, I thought, oh, there's a glimmer of hope. Maybe we can create some skills training. We don't have the tech industry down there, we don't have the forest industry down there, we don't have the building industries down there. And you know, I'm going to be really focusing on action. We don't have a budget, you know, like we partner with someone, we've got no money to help them in any way. And, you know, sorry. But
I'd love to hear the enthusiasm, Councillor.
yeah, well, it's just,
Yeah,
sat through too many
Linda?
of these.
Thank you, Mayor Huntsman. Just for some clarity in terms of this committee and the action that it will be implementing, in terms of industry specifically, and Pete can correct me if I'm wrong, but we aren't partnering necessarily with specific industries with this committee. This committee is about developing implementing actions for economic development. Doing that key account strategy, what industries do you want to target for economic development? The actual businesses and industries themselves are the beneficiaries of economic development. They don't sit on this committee. This committee are advisors to help us implement actions that one person at the district can't do. And in terms of budget, I'm not quite sure the question. Again, partnering people, we spend a lot of time, our council spends a lot of time looking at whether economic development should be an internal function of big government or an external. I think the reason it's a difficult question is because it's not an easy answer and it's not black and white and either or. And my belief as CEO is this composition, this committee, is a good hybrid of both, wherein we are driving from council's priority the economic development responsibilities that we own, or the district owns, and partnering with those external agencies.
And I do appreciate Councillor Carter's cynicism on this. We've been down this road before. I think the difference here is there is clarity to the action plan. And before it was get a bunch of people in the room and talk and not have anything to really run with. And so that's the difference here. And I think that's what council's looking for, is that we start to really target the actions that are in your strategy. And these are your advisors to help you get there. I suspect that as the committee goes along, you're going to find certain aspects or certain things, maybe social, more training stuff and skills development needs to be, and you're going to add some people to this advisory group. This is an organic group. It's not a static group. I see lots of people inputting into your advisory group as you go along, and as certain things become more topical or you focus in on certain targets within the action plan, you're going to get different inputs. So this is not a static thing. This is not an economic development committee. This is a group of people that are going to help take the action plan.
if I may add one point of clarification after. Just that a lot of the work that's going to be done is actually not the mandate specifically of the district. So for example, skills training, I actually rely on partners to be able to actually facilitate that skills training, and that's why we're at the table together. So in many cases, the budget won't be directly attached to the District of Squamish. The budget may be sitting with the partner and under their mandate.
Thank you. Councillor Spence.
Thanks, Kate. I really appreciate you presenting this and having this up. I actually appreciate this committee a lot more than I would have like having the businesses talk about their needs. We've done the BRE plan already. We've done a lot of economic development work, and really economic development is about creating an environment that supports businesses, and you don't need the businesses all at the table. You need a high-level group, and I think this really touches on, I love the community services in there, and Community Futures actually does address, that is where a lot of the employment programs for the Women's Center and the Home Shelter, a lot of them are entrenched in Community Futures. The Women's Enterprise Network as well ensures equity, and you have academia in there as well. I think this working group can bring things to that higher level and look at things on a policy level and red tape level and things that actually prevent businesses. And I want to add one kudos to our staff. And over the last few weeks of looking at plans that have come to council, I've seen a really amazing concerted effort to include working space and second floor office space in all sorts of different areas of our community. I think that there's been a lot of those needs. I mean, I think we're going to have a huge flood of things on the market of addressing those space issues. And this will look at the sector employment and what will be able to be brought into town, as well as supporting our local businesses. So kudos to the planning staff and the economic development, to Kate. And now I will bring up my one concern. Our economic development department is now Kate, and we need to support the economic development environment within our district to actually manage the amount of work that this will be. So I know that one of our members of our staff has left, and I'm wondering if we are replaced, if that is being replaced, or how we are dealing with that.
Mayor Huntsman, yes, the economic development coordinator position will be replaced.
Thank you. Carry on.
It's in the budget. Yeah,
It's
it's in the budget.
It is
a
that's
replacement
I
of
just
a
wanted to make sure that we were, that we weren't down person.
Did we move that, Sarah? No. Moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Chappelle. So city hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor,
Just on principle.
Councillor Clark.
Sorry.
I would like to be it noted that Councillor Clark is against economic development.
I'm against standing committees.
Okay. I know there's some people in the audience who have been waiting for correspondence, so we are finally there. First up, we have a letter from John Harvey around, with regard to the Malcolm River Campground. I see John's here. Do you want to say a few words, John? I'm happy to entertain that. Yeah, come on up.
Thank you. My name's John Harvey. I live in the Highlands. Thank you for this opportunity. What a great follow-up to economic development, because this campground that we're proposing and building is, of course, part of the economic development of our town. It is a business, not-for-profit business, but it will certainly provide a huge public amenity, as we have numerous people living in vehicles around town right now. And hopefully, in concert with Squamish bylaw, we will be able to offer a place for these people to go. And we are hoping to open for July 1st. We are in a bit of a rush, and as you all know, we were not supported by the federal government. We applied for the Canada 150 infrastructure grant and did not succeed with that, but the district has of course helped us before in the past with financial contribution and a lot of support from the staff. We are very close. We have been developing, we've remediated the old abandoned industrial site now. The campground is very close. I invite all of you to come by in the next few weeks to check it out. It's exciting. Everyone that has come by is enthusiastic. Susan Chappelle came by a couple of weeks ago and was very enthusiastic, and I would like to thank you publicly for your offer of financial donation from Squamish Integrated Health. Thank you very much. And as my last correspondence to council was that not only did Murray from Valhalla offer $8,000 towards this program, which is fantastic from a small independent operator, we've succeeded in our MEC grant, Mountain Equipment Co-op. So our financial stress is a little bit less than it was 3 weeks ago. We still hope to be able to open for July 1st. A little bit more help from the district, and that's why I'm before you now. We've got a sea container, and it's very hot, and we can use it for our office in the temporary, but we are looking for an office trailer, an ATCO Britco trailer of 10 by 24. Possibly the district has a line on that secondhand. Otherwise, we're looking for power. And one of the most important things to open is bear-proof food storage lockers. And food storage lockers are very expensive, and they take a long time to get made. There are other options, such as buying these job boxes, metal job boxes, and anchoring them to concrete. Such ideas like that is where we're at. But still, it would be thousands of dollars to protect walk-in campers a place to store their food. So we are still very much in need of $10,000 to get us open in 3 weeks' time, and again in concert with bylaw, so that the whole community knows and all these people living in vans know there's now a viable, affordable option for them. We have someone living on site who will be caretaker and operational manager, and we're hoping for July 1st. It's a tight schedule, but we are very hopeful. And if there's any questions, so just to let you know that if you can come by in the next week or two, we've developed a lot of these very organic little walk-in sites with wood chip waste, ground wood chips. And we've got walk-in, drive-in sites, and we've come very close. So again, I invite you to come by.
Thank you very much, John. It sounds great. I'm going to try to get down there this week for sure. It's always a little challenging to deal with these things outside of the budget process. We have a prescriptive way that we deal with grant and aid applications, and we evaluate them with everything else, and then we budget for them. So we don't have $10,000 sitting around other than council contingency, and we're really early on in the year to be considering that. I don't believe we have an old ATCO trailer. We don't tend to hold on to stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Can we change the grant and aid process though to accommodate some late applications? I thought we changed the wording so that we could and built in some contingency there.
Christine?
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. We did revise the community grant policy. It does allow for late application, however, it requires an application, and there is still a ceiling on the overall grants that we can provide during the year. And it requires that they provide justification as to why the application is late. So at this point, you have about $27,000 left before you hit your ceiling for the year in terms of grants and aids. Your contingency is sitting at $34,915. Just a reminder to council that you had your own campground. We reduced the budget on that from $55,000 down to $10,000, and forewent some of our own campground remediations during the budget process. That the requirement in the grant is that the project show financial viability during and for future years after the project's complete. So I'll just throw a couple of those thoughts out there. It sounds like a great community program, but just so you understand the various parameters.
if we would need a formal, a formal application with the finance, like as we do the normal process. So if we were to consider your request for $10,000, for example, you'd have to show us your financials, you have to make your case, and do all that due diligence, and then we could consider something in front of us. Is that correct, Christine?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to fund it from council contingency and pay it back to the grant if after the application. You know, give me a second.
That gets kind of confusing.
Actually, one and the same, Mayor Heinzman.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
still consider it a grant
So
whenever money.
We still need the background
Yeah,
information to make the, this is something we make everyone do in order, when we give
Sure.
money away. We have to.
So I just want to speak to the campsite a little bit because, you know, I was thinking little campsite and nice community project. When I got on the site, I could not believe the size and how much it addresses the community need of having walking campsites. It's in a natural environment, but what struck me most was the amount of community work that was being done and how much they were how much donation had been made by the community in a lot of different ways, in cement pouring and labor, the public bathrooms, and how just, you know, it's massive, it's in a perfect area, and it will relieve a huge problem of people camping in illegal areas because there is no excuse. And we won't have to leave people in bylaw. Well, it's going to actually save us money in bylaw. That's where the way I look at it is how much money we spend in bylaw to enforce illegal camping. So I would like to I'd like to see this funded by community grant and whatever process it.
Well, I think they just need to bring back a formal application with the financials of the organization.
Easily
and all
done.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
If you can do that as soon as possible, we can get it on the agenda.
That would be beautiful. Thank you. And is there any other questions? I'm there every day, so I welcome you to all come by, and I'll give you a tour. It will be a huge economic benefit to our town because we're hardwired for adventure and nowhere to stay. And of course, I am really thinking and mostly mandated to serve the poor people. This is about $10 a site to start. It's cheaper than any other town anywhere within municipal boundaries. And our town has a lot of poor people coming here to recreate, and this is the perfect place for them. It's an industrial neighborhood, and I think we're going to change the feel of that neighborhood a little bit. But we will hopefully be an economic driver. It's another 200 mouths in town every night all summer, in theory. And from any business economic perspective, I think that's a great thing for our town. So.
You don't actually have to sell us on the.
No, I think they're all sold. I agree, I think they're all sold.
Is that hello, John?
Yes. Okay, so I will work on that very shortly. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you very much. Yes?
You can remember when people camped there 20 years ago, and the town at the time was trying to kick everybody out because nobody wanted climbers in town. Well, fast forward 20 years, and John's in there. How many campsites, John?
Okay, we do need to
We're looking at around
finish the
55.
agenda. Thank you, Ted.
55 campsites.
We are going to move on to the next item, which is air drive parking concerns. And there is a recommendation that it be referred to the engineering staff for consideration and response. Anyone want to do that?
Downtown
Downtown
and air.
I flew in from Toronto this morning. I'm very tired. Yes, that moved by Councilor Reese. Seconded by
They can look at it as
Councilor Cheeky. Councilor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. There's a letter from Mr. Sherlock regarding the Senior Center Society, and there's a recommended motion that it be referred to staff for consideration and response. Moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. There's a letter from Brandy Wilmot with regard to the watershed bill, and I see Brandy's in the audience. Do you want to come and speak to it, Brandy? Sure.
First of all, thanks for having me. So I am one of the owners of the watershed, and just to give you a bit of history of the watershed, this is our 11th year. I personally have worked there for 7 years and have been a co-owner for the past 4 years. And I'm very proud of our little restaurant because we do a lot. We employ over 40 staff. I donate hundreds of dollars for different organizations each year. To name a couple, youth baseball, Big Brothers and Sisters, hospice. I support local musicians in town and artists, giving them a place to come and play and showcase their art. We deal a lot with eagle watchers who come to the dike and are looking for information about the eagles and the wildlife that's in the area. So that's just a sort of a bit of history about who we are. And my biggest concern right now is for public safety. Anybody who goes down Government Road past the watershed on a sunny day knows that it's a very, very dangerous and tumultuous space to go through. We don't have a lot of parking. I wrote a letter in 2013 addressing that issue, and I actually got 3 different people to come in and give me a quote on what it would cost to take down some trees and whatnot to create some more parking actually right in front of the watershed. And I know there's a couple issues with that. First of all, it'll give me about 6 extra spaces. Second of all, the trees are such that the roots really dig into the dike itself and could possibly hinder the integrity of the dike. And so that obviously is an issue. I know that there is, that the dike actually in that area needs to be raised. That is something that's been brought to my attention over the past couple of years. And that is, I know, number 1 on an agenda list somewhere. So I don't know how that affects this, but I know that that is something that has to be looked at. Right now, 11 years ago when the watershed did open, obviously I wasn't part of it at that point. I do know that there was parking on both sides of the street. Now, because of the influx of people, and it's not just people that are coming to the watershed, the parking lot across the road is jam-packed, but those people, they are coming to enjoy the dike. They're coming to float down the river. The different river rafting companies in town, actually, people park there, and then they board there. And so there's lots of different people using that. So now we've got all these parking signs up. We've got concrete barricades put in. Before, on the one side of the road, we had people parking and the bike lane. They were co-using that. Now there is bike lanes on both sides of the road. And I'm just trying to look for maybe just some other options that are going to work, because currently we have signs up in the restaurant, we have signs outside the restaurant, and the no parking signs are not being followed. Hence bylaws down there 24/7. We've got the police down there ticketing, and there's people being towed, and I mean, it's just an ongoing issue. That being said, people are also running back and forth across the road. It's just posing a serious safety risk. So I've kind of been spending some time mitigating some anger towards, primarily towards my restaurant with the safety issue. And I just want to uphold the integrity that I have for the safety issue. I'm willing to obviously completely be part of this solution. I'm looking for suggestions, also looking for some support on, like, if I was to take out the trees and could take out a few trees and do sort of angled parking, is it possible, is it in the foreseeable future to have angled parking all the way down the dike for future? Is it possible to have even the dike itself a bike lane, instead of having both bike lanes on either side of the road, say? I'm just looking for suggestions.
Thanks very much. It is an interesting conundrum, and definitely that area, the whole Eagle Watch Dike area, needs a bit of a master plan for that whole thing. We did acquire a lot at the south end of the Eagle Watching area because we needed to, where the Chino property was, we needed to expand the dike there. So we have some ability to put some parking down at the end there. People would have to, yes, walk a couple hundred feet to get to your, so there is a possibility of that. And that whole area, I think we need to get our heads around as a community in terms of it's a huge attraction, particularly in the winter. We need to get our heads around how that looks and what that whole recreational amenity, that tourism amenity looks like. I think the suggestion of putting a crosswalk, one of those beacon crosswalks, I think is actually a pretty interesting one. And so I think what we will do is we'll refer to staff so they can sort of look at the logistics of that. I don't know what power I think we usually put them on solar, but what kind of things or sight lines we need to have and where it would be placed. But I think that's something that's a good idea for the eagle watchers as well as for people going on, walking their dogs and going to the watershed grill.
And it would definitely slow down traffic, probably a little bit more in that area as well.
And I think it's interesting, it may be worth talking with the Squamish Nation. They have evicted a number of people from the Riverside Campground, which is a very short distance from, and maybe there's an opportunity to lease from them.
Yeah, I have brought that up. I
don't know what their intentions are there, but it might be worth having a conversation.
Yeah.
It's a little bit weird because you are on reserve or you're on a piece of land that's managed by the Williams family. So it's a kind of a weird scenario whereby you're kind of encircled by public lands, but you're not actually technically within our boundaries, technically. It's weird.
I totally recognize that 100%. And I think at this point, it's more, honestly, it's more about the safety of everybody. That is my first number one priority. Second priority is parking. But the first priority really is the safety because it seriously is a massive issue.
It's a terrible issue. That whole parking area is underutilized and people just park randomly and they back into the lane and it's brutal. And it's not just your patrons, it is the visitors to the Eagle Watch area. So it's something that we need to put our minds to, absolutely. I've never heard of the intention of doing angled parking on that street, but I do think there are some potential solutions in there. We're not going to solve them tonight.
No.
Yeah, I do appreciate you bringing it forward. I'm just wondering, Council, do you have any more questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So the trees you're talking about are on the south side of the property?
Yeah.
And are those on district land or are they on
Well,
the
so
nation's land?
that's a good question. There are a few on both sides. There are a few on both sides. And so obviously, and actually on the district side, I had somebody there on Saturday. There are some danger trees actually on the district side that would easily be able to come down with no problem. But the trees are so close to the power lines that obviously we would have to have the road, being maintained by flag people and whatnot, right?
And we can have our staff look at the trees for undermining the dike.
Yeah.
And other things, and that's something we can easily go out and assess fairly quickly.
But just to follow up, so what I'm trying to understand though is what is the barrier for you in getting the trees down that are on the nation line?
Oh, so when in 2013 when I had the trees assessed, I want to say they're maple trees.
No, they're cottonwoods.
They're cottonwoods. Okay. They have I just know that the root structure. They were saying that the root structure in those particular trees are crazy, and so it's not as simple as just kind of going and cutting it down. The root structure goes all the way into the dike. Okay. I know that the dike there's issues with the dike in that area. I don't want to compromise it anymore. That was just a concern for sure.
Okay, I understand.
Brought up this may be a question to staff. I'm interested in business licensing and having commercial companies parking in our lots, and what sort of resources they pay into the district for using our land. And I guess it's not just the rafting companies, it's the mountain bike companies, everything else. It's a separate issue completely, but it does concern me that we have commercial companies parking in that lot in order to use facilities. I'm not sure if they have business licenses or
it's public land, they can park wherever they want.
But if it's a commercial company using it's like a tenure. Can anybody any commercial company use Squamish Resources We have business licensing for food trucks, but we don't have business licensing for rafting companies or people that use our facilities.
I'm not sure what the rafting companies are doing.
They're rafting down the river.
And they're pulling
in and using our public parking areas to load their.
Okay, is this on this site?
It's more the people that are coming to get on the rafting that the customers of the rafting companies are more. We get big busloads of people coming to go view the eagles and stuff like that. But generally it's just public. I don't generally see the rafter guys in there. They're just picking their customers up, which it's public parking lot.
Councilor Blackmore.
Yeah, I forgot to mention there's a couple other things. I drive by here daily, so I always watch how it changes. But I know that we had talked about this earlier. I don't know why it hasn't happened yet. Maybe it was a budget issue or something. But we had talked about putting in concrete barriers around the perimeter of the gravel lot so that there's only 1 or 2 entrance points so that it's not random. Because that's the problem. You come around the hairpin and it's random and the sight lines are bad. And I think if we solve that one, plus potentially the beacon crosswalk closer to your establishment, that's probably the 2 major issues. But I'm not sure, maybe staff, when they're looking into it, can take a look at that. Like dropping in some concrete barriers seems to me not too expensive.
Yeah, because right now people just come in and are all along that area.
Yeah, and then the parked cars are blocking the sight lines of the pedestrians that are coming out.
Oh yeah, it is seriously sketchy. Yeah.
And I believe that parking area is on Crown land.
Yeah, and then there's quite a bit of Crown land behind that actual, and so I don't know what the parameters are around actually making that parking lot bigger with that Crown. I don't know if that's something that can be
I suspect we're encroaching illegally already without their permission, but we can look at getting their permission. Councilor Razor.
Yeah, and I was going to suggest this be referred to staff because the other thing that we've talked about, and frankly I can't recall exactly where it is, we are scheduled in the next little while to do some significant dike improvements in that area. It was the reason we purchased that house with, now it's got just piles of rock and stuff there, and the house is gone just to the south of you. And that was, as you well know, that was the area that was really threatened in 2003, and so it needs some upgrades. But we've talked about a general redesign of that area, possibly even moving the road a little bit. I think there's issues about whether the road's on nation land versus district land, etc. And so a lot of this would, I think, be kind of wrapped up in that. Certainly any significant money by the district would probably want to wait for that. There might be some short-term things, and you've mentioned a couple. But the other possibility really is the nation also, as your landlord, sort of coming to the table and assisting with that, because I think it's to their advantage as well. But if the Riverside is not going to be a trailer court, it's right there and it's flat and it's not overgrown yet or anything like that, and it could probably very easily be turned into a parking facility, which may not have people there going to your restaurant, but it may have people there going to the dike for eagle watching who might otherwise park right around your restaurant. So I think there certainly is a bit of a possible advantage to that. Yeah. So my suggestion is that this be referred, well, in fact, I'll make the motion be referred to staff with that in mind.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the conversation though. It's great. Seconded by Councilor Chappelle. And I believe you are having conversations with the nation.
Yeah.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Next up, we have Valleycliff community mailboxes. There's correspondence from Canada Post, and there's a recommendation that we refer to the planning staff. Moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Blackman-Wolf. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Ocean Watch House Sound Addition Action Plan Task Force. I'll just frame this a little bit. This came out of a conversation at the House Sound Community Forum. We were talking about the Ocean Watch report, and in the report there's all sorts of recommendations and actions that could be the jurisdiction or the purview of local governments with regard to harbor policies or marine strategies and all that sort of thing. And so it was thought that we put a little bit of a task force together under the umbrella of the House on Community Forum to look at the recommendations in the Ocean Watch and then maybe come up with a bit of some more specific things that local governments can do. I kind of put a suggestion forward and offered that we host the first one, so we're hosting the first one. And so we're just getting motions from councils just to basically say, yeah, we want to participate in the task force, and yes, here's a relevant staff person and an elected official who will participate in the task force. We set it up just for 6 months to really sort of just go through the Ocean Watch document and sort of target things that are actionable by local governments. That's what that is. Any questions? Seeing none, why don't we just start with a motion to participate in the action plan? I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Elliott. Any more conversation? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I certainly offered to host the first one. I'll probably go to the first one just to get it going, but I don't necessarily have to be the council rep on this if someone else is really interested. But if no one else is interested, I'm happy to do it as well. But
Can you get clarity? What was the motion? I missed.
It's in the report. It's to participate in the.
To participate, so it's not the motion that's on the cover of the agenda. Okay.
Through the House on Community Forum umbrella, the District of Squamish will participate in the Ocean Watch Action Plan.
Yes. And then the second part of that is that we appoint a council member and a staff person. Linda, is there a particular staff person you think would be best for this?
I suppose my first thought is who's got the capacity, because it's generally somebody that's in a department that's overwhelmed right now. And I wouldn't want to commit someone tonight, so if you can leave that with me, then that would be.
Okay, we don't have to, we can just say, and that the CAO appoints someone. I think the only intention was that it's someone that's got either marine strategy, harbor strategy, marine-oriented portfolio, whether it's a planner or that type of thing, as opposed to Sarah. But we can leave that up to you. Council, anyone interested? You would like to make? Great. So what I'll do is just, I'll host the first one and you're welcome to come, and then I can step back, and that'd be great if you could do that. Awesome. So I'll move that Councillor Race be appointed for the District of Squamish, and that the CAO assign a staff person. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Councillor Race. That's awesome. There's a dust abatement letter from Julia Broussalier. Move that we refer to staff for response to follow-up, but I believe we've already done that. So it's redundant, so we don't need to do it. Or maybe we should do it just for the record. I'll move it, seconded by Karen, by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And there is a letter from S. Lingard with regard to traffic in Campbell and Manfarm Road. No recommended motion in my agenda cover. Okay, council, any thoughts on this? I just have to dig it up. Councilor Buckenwald?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we might send it to staff for consideration of measures such as potentially having a porta potty installed in that area. Know what kind of use we have, because it does strike me as sort of a very isolated spot that is though quite well used.
Yeah.
Or do we look at an option of a gate to close it, because it's right off the highway, right? So I can see why it ends up being a camping spot.
So maybe we should refer this to staff to look at options. Councillor Buckman, can you with that? Yeah. Second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
If I may, just to add to that, I ride through there with my kids all the time on bikes, and I see a lot of people camping there all the way along, right up in the Pasco Road area.
And now we hopefully soon will be able to say, hey, there's this great little campground. Great. There are a number of correspondences. Looking if any councillor wishes to pull any of these. Don't see any. I'll entertain a motion to receive for information. Moved by Councillor Ray, second by Councillor Blackman.
Sorry,
and Wolf.
I was maybe gonna pull number 8, the boat launch.
Sure, actually, that's true then, yep. We've got a mover and a seconder. Would you like to speak to the boat launch?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure that we sort of keep this on our radar as we move forward with, you know, our OCP process, as well as any land use deliberations on waterfront sites. So we have a opportunity to line this up. Because I do think that, you know, we are quickly building out almost all the usable sites, and so, you know, we should have at least one good boat launch that is suitable.
And we've had some conversation about Darrell Bay. Unfortunately, the one that's downtown isn't on land that we own and isn't owned by us, which is a bit challenging. But there may be ways of improving that to the point where it's at least not a hazard. So that there may be a conversation there, but we probably need a couple of them in the future, and we should be strategizing where they should be so we can get them built. For example, I was thinking with the waterfront landing one, I was like, should be a boat launch here, but there isn't. So, so I'm wondering if we do want to refer to. Sure. We'll refer to a committee. We'll figure out a committee to put it on. Yeah. So we have a motion on the floor to receive all of these. I'll entertain a motion to refer that one to committee right after we deal with the receipt of the correspondence. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Buckenwolf would like to refer the boat launch letter to committee, the boat launch topic to committee. Seconded by Councillor Race. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Councillor Buckenwolf. We have minutes from the committee of the whole of May 16th, special business meeting of May 16th, regular business meeting of May 16th, committee of the whole of May 23rd, and special business meeting of May 23rd. Move approval of those minutes. Moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The recommended motion, Squamish Avenues of Change Community Impact Project proposal. That the district commit to participate at a joint community partnership table with the Sea to Sky Early Years Table, including the United Way of Lower Mainland, School District 48, Sea to Sky Community Services Society, BC Ministry of Children and Family Development, Vancouver Coastal Health, Squamish Nation, as part of a United Way Avenues of Change initiative. Moved by Councillor Black-Wolf, second by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. There are minutes to receive for information from the Advisory Design Panel of May 18th, moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Elliott.
I'm just mentioning the Advisory Design Panel again. We discussed this one specifically being the setbacks and heights related to Cleveland Avenue. This was the minutes to that, and we discussed it, and you said that might be a good one for council to watch. I think it'd be a good one for council to watch. And
Can we get an email to council with that link and the time on when that discussion is? That'd be great, thank you.
if we watch it, it'd be nice to have a discussion afterwards.
Council staff in-camera announcements. I would like to announce that we have the following members of the Select Committee on Public Art for a 2-year term, and that is Member at Large Meg Fellows, Member at Large Anne Langwadup, Member at Large Heidi Batchert-Burke, Youth Representative Tiana Lee, and Squamish-based artist Andy Anison. I welcome them to their first meeting tomorrow night. There is no unscheduled public attendance, or we've already dealt with it. Open question period for clarification related to, she's gone. She abandoned us. Councilor staff announcements. Oh, I was away.
Hi, Gwen.
Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks. So on, on Sunday, I participated in the right-of-way stigma, starting at Krackendale Elementary, and this is it's important to recognize some of the mental health issues we have in our community and people who are vulnerable, and to provide not just some cash as a fundraising, but also just to show support for them. Principally sponsored by Greg Gardner Motors, but a lot of different community participants and stakeholders. And a good crowd this year, apparently. I wasn't at the one last year, but I had a great ride in the mountain bike. They set a nice course, so it was really a nice way to spend a Sunday morning.
Awesome.
I had the pleasure on Sunday night to represent council at a dinner for the Governor General's Leadership Conference participants for the cohort that's traveling around BC. And it was just Kirby Brown at the gondola hosted just a wonderful evening. Our MLA, Jordan Sturdy, was there. Some of the founders of the gondola, myself, and then these participants from all across Canada, from Vancouver to Iqaluit to Newfoundland. And it was just amazing. And so for each course, we would have discussion, and then after each course, Kirby would sort of take his glass, and one of the participants could ask a question about leadership of anyone at the table. So there was some really amazing dialogue that just happened about change in communities. And so this group is spending 10 days traveling around BC. It's a pretty intense agenda. They'll probably get 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. They're visiting Prince George, Fort St. John, Kelowna, the Lower Mainland, as well as Squamish and Whistler. And then they all head back to Ottawa, and they have to boil their entire 10 days down to a 15-minute presentation that they all agree on. And they come from all different backgrounds: union activists, social activists, private industry, entrepreneurs. It's just, I just wanted to go with them. It was really envious. Anyway, it was really.
Why do you always get, when you're acting mayor, you get to go to gondola every time?
I've had some nice meals at the top of the
I don't know what it is.
as acting mayor. Thank you very much.
That's a black and gold.
Yes, I was waived last week to attend the Federation of Canadian Municipalities National Conference in Ottawa. You know, it had its usual mix of workshops and study sessions and things like that, which, you know, had varying utility. But one of the things that it made me realize is that, you know, we are pretty advanced in the way we do some things. And you know, some of the things that we take for granted here are not done in other municipalities at this time. So that was quite interesting to observe from such a wider selection of municipalities. Second of all, though, and my most favorite part was study tours, and one of them I had the opportunity to visit a farm incubator project on the outskirts of Ottawa, and I think there's a lot of good lessons to be learned from what they've started, and I could really see something like that happening in Squamish in the near future. So.
You want to add to that?
Yeah, I also attended FCM, and I attended a lot of digital strategy meetings, as well as one of the, I did a big tour of Gatineau and Ottawa area farms, and went to one farm in particular called the Hendricks Farm, which is a really interesting co-op farm as well. So there's a lot of ideas there that it actually sold private residences that had to go buy into the co-op, a co-op farm idea. So they all bought into the co-op, but also worked the farm. So everybody that was there was required to manage the crops as well under the leadership of the farmer that had the land. And it was just an amazing space. It backed onto the Gatineau, and also seeing the connectivity of, we sort of had a discussion about this today with our laneway discussion, but how they've interconnected everything, but they've left roads for cars, and then there's pathways all through the area that everybody knows about, not necessarily in the park, and they've left all their commercial areas connected through pathways. And the pathways aren't paved, they're chipped or compressed gravel so that you can have wheelchairs and accessibility through it. But I just found that, I found that pretty interesting. And the digital strategy stuff with the BIA work was an interesting session. There's a lot of really, you know, the private sponsorship is a difficult thing. If you could extract some good ideas if you left out the names of the companies that were telling you what the ideas. So I did really enjoy it, and it is, as Councillor Blackman-Wolf said, the difference in the land use and the astoundingness of how much land, flat buildable land they have out there, and how they have they don't concentrate their land use. And then you come back here and we're so geophysically constrained by our geography, and our buildable land's a lot different, and so it's just really interesting to compare the sprawl, and they require people to, one of the big takeaways is that that area, the area that I went in Quebec, they require people to have an acre lot. So you can't build unless you have an acre lot to put a house on. And that's why the Hendricks Farm wasn't doing so well, because even there's these massive big homes, well, they're probably like 3,000, 4,000 square feet homes, but they're right next to each other. And even though they back onto the park, I read all the opposition to the project, because here's this massive farm, massive amount of land backing onto the Gatineau, and still there was the public that was protesting that the houses were too close together. I was looking at it and comparing it to the density we have out here, and I was just astounded at the fact that, you know, I don't think that land use is going to change anytime soon, but how you bring people along with the idea of living closer to each other is really interesting, watching east to west in our country.
I can't even talk about this right now, I'm so tired. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to entertain a motion to terminate.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say